His chest had been pierced, and his body was about to fall apart. One could even see bones sticking out from one of his shoulders and both thighs. It was a ghastly sight. But Long Chen's sword had pierced through his opponent's head. This was the result of Long Chen taking 2 nearly fatal injuries in the end. The figure exploded into runes, which then transformed into a ray of light that shot toward a wall. Lines lit up on that wall, and a door appeared. Long Chen collapsed on the ground. This battle had been too dangerous. Now that he had killed his opponent, he immediately went limp. He was this close to passing out. Long Chen hadn't used the Nirvana scripture or the divine ring or the battle armor. He also hadn't used the primal chaos bead's healing ability. Only now did he slowly draw out the life energy from the primal chaos space. His body began to heal. He smiled self-mockingly. I really am stupid. I actually had to compete with myself. But this is also good. It just once more proves that my theory is correct. In theory, a person could only use 100% of their power. But his theory was that this limit could be broken through willpower. In the Shao tribe, Long Chen had used this theory to help Shao Fei awaken. And what had occurred this time also validated his theory. If he had retreated at this time, it would have been a grave blow to his confidence. He probably wouldn't even be able to believe his own bragging in the future. So despite knowing it was foolish to the max, Long Chen had still chosen to use that exceedingly foolish method to challenge his limits. As a result, he had succeeded. When he had succeeded in killing another version of himself that was stronger in every aspect, his mental realm had immediately become crystal clear. That increase in mental realm would bring unimaginable benefits to his future cultivation. Good thing these spirit world trees have enough energy. Completely recovering only took 1/3 of their life energy. Looking at those slightly dispirited trees in the primal chaos space, many emotions filled Long Chen. As expected, danger was directly proportional to profit. Those trees possessed shocking amounts of life energy, which was good, as his physical body had already reached an extremely powerful level. He wouldn't be easily injured, but once he was, it required a ridiculous amount of life energy to heal. Ah, fine. I don't really need this hidden ground gold Spider King's corpse anyways. Long Chen thought about it and decided to toss the precious Spider King's corpse into the black soil as nutrients for the trees. Although there were many precious parts to the Spider King's corpse, the most valuable thing to Long Chen was the life energy it could offer. As its corpse sank into the black soil, endless life energy entered the dispirited trees. They once more began to flourish. But there were too many trees that were splitting the nutrients. They grew a bit, but they were still a ways off their peak state. Long Chen wasn't worried about that. Instead, he was happy. The larger the trees grew, the more life energy they could hold. He continued to rest for a bit. Although his body had recovered, his mind hadn't fully calmed itself after that heart-pounding battle. During that battle, he had used a hypnotic art on himself to make him see his doppelganger as his cultivation path's shackles. If he couldn't kill it, he couldn't grow and become an expert. If he was unable to become an expert, he would be unable to find his parents, let alone get revenge against whoever had harmed him. Furthermore, in the countless battles in the future, his brothers and sisters would die one by one. That had released a surging battle intent within him, and as a result, each one of his moves had been attacks with his life on the line. Of course, Long Chen wasn't an idiot. He cherished his life more than anyone. There were far too many things he had to protect. So while he might not have been afraid while fighting, the effect of the lingering fear afterward was still very strong. After all, he had exchanged thousands of blows with his stronger duplicate, and each one of those moves had been a brush past the Grim Reaper's shoulder. Anyone without a steady will as strong as his would have cracked under that pressure. His body stopped trembling, and he walked over to the door. Inside should be the ultimate reward of this trial. He didn't know whether that would be able to let him regrow his spirit root, spirit blood, and spirit bone, but if it could, thinking of that, Long Chen's heartbeat quickened. Passing through the door, he entered a square room 30 meters wide. Next to the wall, there was a platform with a jade bottle on it. The jade bottle was only a foot tall. It was covered in lines that should be a kind of rune. It seemed it had to be an exceedingly high-grade spatial storage item. There was a jade stopper on top of it. Long Chun snuck his spiritual strength through the stopper and into the bottle. "Fuck! What bastard stole my treasure?" he roared furiously. The jade bottle had a 30-meter space inside it, but it was completely empty. He couldn't stop his fury. After fighting to the brink of death, he hadn't obtained anything. He was about to go crazy. He crushed the bottle into smithereens. Cough. Young people shouldn't be so easily angered. Suddenly, an ephemeral voice rang out in Long Chen's ears. He was startled, and flying rainbow instantly entered his hand. His spiritual strength spread, but he didn't notice any oddities. "Who are you?" shouted Long Chen. "I didn't expect someone to actually manage to get here after all these years." "Young fellow, you're not bad." That voice once more rang out, but Long Chen couldn't tell where it was coming from, or even whether it was male or female. "Reveal yourself." He didn't know whether this person was a friend or foe, so he had to be cautious. This ending was a bit strange, and he didn't dare to be careless. Suddenly, the wall in front of him collapsed, causing him to jump. He hastily retreated, but he found that the collapsed wall merely revealed another room. That room also had a platform in it, and there was a bronze bell a foot tall on it. "Little fellow, I've revealed myself. Are you still not going to come over and pay your respects to this lord?" The bell suddenly spoke. Its voice sounded ancient and venerable. Long Chun was naturally startled. He looked around and saw that there really was nothing out of the ordinary before walking over. Once he was closer, he saw that the bell was badly damaged. It was covered in cracks and also missing a piece as if someone had smashed it with a hammer. "Brat! What's with that look? Are you looking down on this lord?" raged the bell. Long Chun suddenly thought of something and asked, "Did you steal the heaven-earth spirit source?" "Cough, don't say that I stole it. I just borrowed it." "Yes, I drank it," said the bell awkwardly. "You goddamn bastard. The treasure I risked my life for was actually drunk by you?" Long Chun immediately flew into a rage. He took out a hammer and smashed it onto the bell. Boom! As a result, that middle-grade enchanted hammer, whose head was as big as a table, instantly exploded upon striking the bell. As for Long Chun, he was sent flying by a powerful chi wave and slammed into a wall. He almost coughed up blood. "You dare to strike this lord? You must be tired of life," raged the bell. "Fuck off. You stole what's mine and you still think you're justified." Long Chun was even more enraged. The heaven-earth spirit source had been stolen. He now took out a saber and directly used split the heavens. When his saber chi struck the bell, a faint layer of light appeared on it. His saber image was blown apart. "Brat, if you continue to be rude, I'll have to teach you a lesson," warned the bell. "Rude? You're the damn thief, you shameless old thing," cursed Long Chun. That heaven-earth spirit source had been extremely important to him. But now, all his previous hopes vanished into thin air. He felt like he was about to go crazy. "Cough. That does seem to be my mistake. But how was I supposed to know that someone would come here after all these years?" The bell felt a bit guilty. "Cough up all that heaven-earth spirit source you drank." Long Chun directly took out a barrel and placed it in front of the bell. "Are you planning on drinking my piss?" said the bell icily. "You bitch." Now that it had said this, then even if it did hand over the heaven-earth spirit source, would he dare to drink it? He directly smashed the barrel onto the bell, and the barrel instantly exploded. "That's enough. If we didn't come from the same place, I'd have long since put you in your place. Do you believe me when I say that if I release the slightest bit of my divine might, you'll be crushed in body and soul?" Its reply was another barrel. Long Chun cursed. "Do you think I'm an idiot? Those runic chains have bound you completely. Do you want to try crushing me? You can see those divine chains?" The bell's tone was a bit shocked. Long Chun was so furious that he couldn't be bothered to reply. The heaven-earth spirit source was gone now. His hope to regain what he had lost popped like a bubble. There was nothing more to say. With the bell in its broken-down state, It was clear it had taken the heaven-earth spirit source to recover. It wouldn't have left any for him. Although he couldn't see them, his sharp perception allowed him to sense invisible chains in the air that tightly bound the bell. It was a prisoner, so Long Chun wasn't afraid of it. "Little fellow, I might have stolen your heaven-earth spirit source, but I can make it up to you. Don't worry, since we come from the same place, I wouldn't trick you," said the bell. Its words caused Long Chun to be a bit flabbergasted. "The same place? Didn't I say that we come from the same hometown? You also came from the eastern wasteland, correct?" said the bell. Long Chun was startled, never having expected this bronze bell to know this. But he didn't say anything. He could trust it just based on this. This trial had been extremely strange and ruthless. Those 108 pillars had been able to peer through all his battle skills and magical arts, and perhaps they had even been able to rifle through his memories. Otherwise, Blooddrinker wouldn't have appeared. So while Long Chun was surprised, he couldn't reveal that, nor did he say anything. This bell was particularly strange. It was already in such a broken state, and it was bound by countless divine chains, but enchanted items would instantly explode upon coming into contact with it. "Hee hee, brat, you're very interesting. Sometimes you're as impetuous as an idiot, sometimes you're crafty like a fox. What a marvel," laughed the bell. "What's your goal?" Long Chun didn't like beating about the bush. "Bring me out of this place." "Are you joking? An existence as strong as you requires me to bring you out," snorted Long Chun. "I'm not joking. In truth, we have quite the destiny between us. I've been locked in here for too long. Those bastards extracted my core energy to maintain their trials, and now I've already reached my breaking point. If you don't bring me out, then it won't be long before I completely disappear from this world. As an item spirit, my core energy is my life energy. I hope you can help me. I can give you a satisfactory repayment," said the bell solemnly. "How do I know you won't kill me once I save you? To tell you the truth, this is already the third time I've run into such a scenario. The last two were played to death by me, and I also gained quite a bit of profit. But I sense something dangerous about you, and my guess is that I won't be able to obtain anything good from your body." Long Chun shook his head frankly. "Benefits? For now, I wouldn't be able to give you anything. But once I return to the martial heaven continent, I'll definitely give you an immense reward." "And how am I supposed to believe you?" asked Long Chun. He couldn't sense any fluctuations from the bell, but his intuition said that this bell's origin was beyond imagination, or it wouldn't be locked in here. If it was an evil weapon, then wouldn't he be doomed? So of course he was still hesitant. "Is the name of the Eastern Wasteland bell enough to win your trust?" The bell was silent for a long while before suddenly speaking. Long Chun cried out in shock. "The Eastern Wasteland bell? Wasn't that a divine item from the era of legends?" The rumor was that the Eastern Wasteland bell had been the protective divine item of the Eastern Wasteland, and it had controlled all the Eastern Wasteland's karmic luck. There were myths and legends that said the martial heaven continent had once been 5 blocks, but it wasn't like it was currently. Those 5 regions had actually been led by the Eastern Wasteland. Unlike now, it had been the Eastern Wasteland that had been the strongest. The legend was that the other regions also had divine items controlling their karmic luck. But the Eastern Wasteland bell had been the strongest, the leader of the 5 divine items, which had allowed the Eastern Wasteland to dominate the 5 regions. But legends were legends. There were few people that believed in them. They were just imaginary things seniors like to tell children. So hearing the name of the Eastern Wasteland bell today, that name was like a hammer striking Long Chun's heart. Looking at this foot-tall bell that was covered in cracks and looked like it might shatter at any moment, Long Chun truly found it difficult to associate it with that legendary divine item. But for some unknown reason, Long Chun trusted it. That was the intuition that stemmed from the 9-star Hegemon body art. That intuition had never misled him. "What should I do to help you?" asked Long Chun. "You trust me?" The bell was a bit surprised. "Yes." "Thank you. That'll save me a great deal of trouble. If you asked me too much, it would be hard on me." "There are many things that I can't say," said the Eastern Wasteland bell. "Since I've chosen to trust you, I won't be so fussy about it. Helping Senior is helping myself. I hope that when I one day fall into danger, Senior can help. Longchen smiled. Ha ha ha, that's a good temperament. Don't worry, I don't like owing people. Come. First I'll teach you how to break these chains. Longchen returned to the room. He slashed Flying Rainbow directly through the ground, creating a large crack. Gently opening the crack, he saw an underground room in which countless formation lines were continuously moving like snakes. This was the core of this trial region. It was also the crux of the entire grand formation that controlled the operation of the trial region. It was constantly drawing out the Eastern Wasteland Bell's energy to maintain the trials. According to reason, the Eastern Wasteland Bell should have long since run out of energy and shattered. But then it said that at a certain time, the number of trial takers had dropped precipitously, and so it had taken less of its energy. It slowly found a way to absorb the energy within this room's treasures and other rewards so it could last longer. Longchen knew that the Eastern Wasteland Bell was talking about the destruction of the immemorial path. Only the Shao tribe's disciples had later occasionally gone to the lower-level trials to test their luck, which was the only reason it had managed to endure. Obviously, the Eastern Wasteland Bell still didn't know what had happened to the immemorial path. When asked about how long it had been, it merely said that it had been chained here for too long to calculate. The node is where those 9 marks converge. Destroy it and the entire formation will be ruined. Remember to use Thunder Force, not a martial weapon. Otherwise, you'll be directly destroyed. The Eastern Wasteland Bell's voice rang out from above. Longchen nodded. He saw there was a red dot where 9 large runes converged. That was his target. Taking a deep breath, he pointed his finger. A lightning arrow shot at the red dot. Suddenly, all the runes stopped moving. But in the next instant, they began to move many times faster than before. No, that wasn't enough power. The formation lines have gone chaotic. Get out! Shouted the Eastern Wasteland Bell. Even without its warning, Longchen had already rushed off. At the same time, he brought out his divine ring and battle armor, summoning his greatest defense. That was because he was horrified to see all these formations lines go chaotic as if they were boiling. The ground erupted. Longchen was sent flying, vomiting blood. He smashed into a wall, and then the entire room suddenly collapsed. Longchen's vision darkened as he became unable to see a thing. Little fellow, are you all right? Longchen suddenly heard a voice in his head. How did you get in here? Longchen was startled. The Eastern Wasteland Bell had actually entered his mind sea, and he didn't have the slightest ability to resist. There's no need to be so surprised by such a small matter. Although I might be on the verge of death, such a minor thing is still simple. But I really didn't expect that your mind sea would be so vast. Even soul cultivators at your realm wouldn't have such soul energy. Oh, no wonder you wanted the heaven-earth spirit source and you were so mad once it was taken. So your spirit bone was excavated by someone. That really is vicious. What the? Even your spirit blood was extracted. What's going on? And your spirit root Aya. Longchen felt the Eastern Wasteland Bell scanning his body. But when it reached his dantian, it let out a muffled groan. It seemed it had received a backlash. Senior, are you all right? He asked hastily. I'm fine. After that curt reply, the Eastern Wasteland Bell descended into silence as if it was thinking. After a long moment, it said, Longchen, don't tell anyone about me. Don't worry, Senior. I keep a tight lid over my mouth, said Longchen. He really wasn't a gossip. Good. I need to rest in your mind sea. I won't be able to help you with anything temporarily. Take care. After saying that, the Eastern Wasteland Bell no longer said anything. It should have entered some kind of special state. Longchen looked around. He saw that the formation had been broken. The earth, which had previously been harder than metal, had become soft after losing the support of the runes. He scurried up a path like a mouse. Occasionally, he would encounter boulders which he had to break to continue upward. It would have been better if Guoran had been present. His digging tool would have been extremely helpful. Longchen didn't know how long he had been digging. Eventually, the pressure began to weaken, and he knew he was quickly approaching the surface. As expected, after less than 100 meters, light flooded his eyes. He jumped out of the ground and saw that he had dug his way into a huge pit 100 miles wide. After a moment's thought, he realized that the trial and its underground caverns must have collapsed. It seemed this trial was completely ruined now. "I've finally come out." Long Chun suddenly raised his head and roared, releasing all the stifling air in his lungs. This trial had been too terrifying. He had almost lost his life inside. Now that he saw the sunlight again, he felt like he had been reborn. Carefully thinking about what had happened when it came to benefits, he didn't think his greatest gain was the rapid advancement of the Enlightenment Palace star, nor did he think it was flying rainbow. Instead, it was the increase in his mental realm from defeating himself. He was now a completely different person. If previously he had been like a sharp sword that released such a chilling light that no one dared to look directly at it, then now he was a sheathed divine weapon. All that sharpness had been reserved. His gaze was completely calm, but his eyes still contained a profound light that might be fully released at any moment. In terms of mental realm, he felt like he had truly advanced an incredible amount. He was completely calm and content. Looking at the huge pit behind him, Long Chun felt immense gratitude toward the Shao tribe. They had truly helped him greatly. Leaving the pit, he continued deeper into the immemorial path. He was completely confident in his new power. The immemorial path has actually been reduced to this state. It really is hard to believe. Long Chun had crossed 3 abysses when the Eastern Wasteland Bell's voice rang out, filled with pity. "Senior, didn't you need to rest?" asked Long Chun. "The rest I was talking about is resting in your mind. See, I can't help you handle enemies, but that doesn't stop me from communicating with you. I can see everything through your eyes." The Eastern Wasteland Bell sighed, thinking of the immemorial path's glory back then, and now seeing it in its ruined state. "I really can't help feeling emotional." "Senior, you saw the immemorial path in its golden age?" asked Long Chun. But after asking that, he felt his own question to be a bit stupid. The Eastern Wasteland Bell had been first sealed here, and only then had the immortal path crumbled. Yes, when I was locked here, the immemorial path was completely fine. But if the immemorial path hadn't been ruined, perhaps I would have long since ceased to exist, said the Eastern Wasteland Bell. "Senior, I want to ask you a few questions. If it touches on any sensitive topics, you don't need to answer," probed Long Chun. He had many suspicions. "Ask. I'll naturally answer if I can. But there are some things that someone on your level shouldn't know. It would bring you too much karma," said the Eastern Wasteland Bell. Long Chun nodded. Perhaps all of this involved extremely terrifying secrets. He was just at the Xiantian realm. That wasn't enough to come into contact with those secrets. "Senior, how did you end up like this?" asked Long Chun. "Betrayal." The Eastern Wasteland Bell's reply was extremely curt. Betrayal? Could it be? Long Chen's heart shook. He thought of something, but the Eastern Wasteland Bell clearly didn't want him to know too much, so he swallowed his words. "I want to know, with my aptitude, what level would I rank in the ancient times?" asked Long Chen. "Why would you want to know this?" "Because in the current era, within the same realm, I stand at the peak amongst my peers. But in the immemorial paths trials, I found that it seems I'm still extremely lacking compared to those ancient heavenly geniuses," said Long Chun. "With your current power, you're actually at the peak? It seems the world really has changed," sighed the Eastern Wasteland Bell. Long Chun was speechless. Although he knew the Eastern Wasteland Bell was just sighing emotionally, this tone really was hurtful. Although he had been prepared for it, he still felt awkward. "With your talent, even in my era, you would have counted as a peak genius. But regretfully, your spirit root, spirit blood, and spirit bone have all been removed. Your talent was ruined. With your current aptitude, in that era, you could just barely count as ordinary. You couldn't even reach the middle level. However, because of your cultivation technique, your combat power can count as having reached the middle level," said the Eastern Wasteland Bell. "Senior, you know the origin of my cultivation technique?" "No, it's just a guess. Furthermore, your Dantian has an extremely terrifying existence that doesn't let me probe it." So I don't dare to talk wildly about you, said the Eastern Wasteland Belle with a bit of fear. Long Chun was profoundly shaken. Even a legendary divine item was unable to probe the primal chaos bead. Then just what was the primal chaos bead? For even the Eastern Wasteland Belle to describe it as extremely terrifying. Long Chun had an urge to ask about the 9-star hegemon body art, but the Eastern Wasteland Belle was clearly avoiding that topic. In truth, in all my countless years, you're the strongest person I've ever seen. Perhaps you can create a miracle, said the Eastern Wasteland Belle suddenly. Senior, didn't you say my aptitude only counts as ordinary? Aptitude doesn't represent everything. All experts become experts because they are forced. That's what it means when people say that time makes the man. Heroes are forced to appear by the era. The first thing experts need to know is why they have to get stronger. If they get weak, they won't just lose their lives, they'll also lose everything they hold dear. I have noticed you since you entered the trial. On the 8th level, despite being forced to the brink, you didn't cower or feel terror. I saw that confidence inside you that said that you would definitely win. That confidence existed because you knew you couldn't lose, because if you lost, you would lose everything. Furthermore, on the last level, you still chose to abandon your advantage against a stronger version of yourself. You chose to fight with your life on the line. Although that was very stupid, experts must possess the ability to do such stupid things. While I was sealed, I saw far too many people die beneath their own blades. This trial is just a death trap. The person who made this trial was incredibly vicious. The path she walked on was one of countless bones. That's why she called this trial the undefeatable trial. It's not because the trial is undefeatable, but because the only way a person can pass is if they maintain an undefeatable heart even facing a stronger version of themselves. Long Chun, that heart of yours is the staunchest I've ever seen. I trust that you've experienced countless trials that tempered that will. You don't need to care about aptitude. The cycle of the heavenly Taos comes and goes. A loss might be a gain might be a loss. Don't get so attached to such things, said the Eastern Wasteland Belle. A loss might be a gain might be a loss? Was it referring to how he had lost his spirit root, spirit blood, and spirit bone, which allowed him to gain the 9-star hegemon body art? If he hadn't lost his spirit root, thus destroying his dantian, he wouldn't have been able to cultivate the 9-star hegemon body art. Was this predestined? The Eastern Wasteland Belle definitely knew about some things, but it refused to say it directly. Was that self-protection, or to protect him? Many thanks for the reminder, Senior, said Long Chun. Haha, not bad. To have such comprehension skills is truly praiseworthy. It's no wonder. The Eastern Wasteland Belle swallowed the rest of its words. I'd like to ask Senior to help me with something. Long Chun looked at Little Snow in his spiritual space. Little Snow was sleeping and didn't know about his conversation with the Eastern Wasteland Belle. It's useless. It has already obtained an opportunity to mutate and break through its proper shackles. But opportunities come to an end eventually, and its opportunities have run out. There's no way it can continue to advance. The Eastern Wasteland Belle didn't even need Long Chun to explain. Hearing this, Long Chen's heart shook. Little Snow had always been a worry to Long Chen's heart. After reaching the Xiantian realm, Little Snow had reached his limit and couldn't advance any further. Whether it was the heavenly Tao fruits, the divine mortal molting elixir, or the countless other methods he had tried, they had all been useless to Little Snow. Now even the Eastern Wasteland Belle said Little Snow couldn't advance anymore. That was conclusive. Long Chun was growing stronger and stronger, so Little Snow was being left further and further behind. Their days of fighting side by side were gone. Long Chun didn't particularly care about the power Little Snow could offer him, but he could sense that ever since Little Snow had stopped advancing, he had become depressed. He was no longer excited about most things. Each day he would just stay in his spiritual space, refusing to come out. Long Chun felt extremely helpless. If I was at my peak, perhaps I would have been able to change a portion of heaven and earth's laws, breaking their shackles for it. But at most, it would only be able to advance to the 9th rank. To allow it to continue advancing past that would require truly heaven-defying abilities. continued the Eastern Wasteland Belle. What? As long as you can fully recover, you can help Little Snow. Long Chun was delighted to hear this. For me to fully recover is incredibly difficult. Furthermore, by that time, even if it can advance to the 9th rank, you'll have reached higher realms. It wouldn't have any meaning, said the Eastern Wasteland Belle. That's fine. If you need any help, just ask. As long as I can accomplish it, I definitely won't say a word of objection, said Long Chun. It's just an ordinary house pet. Is it worth it for you to act like this? The Eastern Wasteland Belle was a bit puzzled. Little Snow isn't my house pet. He grew up with me from infancy. Moreover, he suffered countless hardships and almost lost his life several times for me. He is my companion. Although I'm strong enough on my own, I hope he can also grow stronger and continue fighting alongside me, said Long Chun. You really are an emotional fool. You actually feel such sentiments toward a magical beast? Fine. I promise once my power fully recovers, I will help you with this, said the Eastern Wasteland Belle helplessly. Many thanks, Senior. Don't thank me yet. My body has been smashed and scattered. It is no longer complete. To recover is not easy. We can just take things step by step. Let's look around the immemorial path to see if we can find the things we need. All right. Long Chun quickly agreed. No matter what, as long as the Eastern Wasteland Belle was present, the problem with Little Snow would be solved sooner or later. After all, it was a legendary existence. It wouldn't dupe him regarding such a thing. Senior, where should we go? My injuries are too heavy and I can't use divine sense to search. It's a good thing your spiritual strength is strong enough to provide me with a slight nourishing effect. At the very least, my injuries won't worsen. You can walk around as you please. Some things are best left to fate. Senior, if my spiritual strength has a nourishing effect on you, why don't you absorb it? Then couldn't you rapidly recover? Foolish talk. How could it be so simple? Although your spiritual strength is strong, it's like a cup of water on a burning house. Furthermore, if I absorbed your spiritual strength, your soul would forever be missing a portion. Even if you agreed, the existence within you wouldn't. Don't worry, when you kill your enemies, I'll absorb their spiritual strength to recover, said the Eastern Wasteland Belle. Although it was reprimanding him, its tone had clearly grown a bit more amiable. In all its countless years, this was its first time seeing someone like Long Chun who had survived countless trials and hardships, and yet still maintained such a pure heart even once he had cultivated to the Xiantian realm. This trust and unstinting companionship was something the Eastern Wasteland Belle found very likable. Boom! Suddenly, the ground shook slightly. Long Chun hastily looked in one direction. He saw a cloud of dust coming from a distant mountain range. That seemed to be the result of an intense battle. He quickly flashed into motion. Thunder Force covered him as he used the lightning body blink in that direction. After going over a mountain, he saw over 10 people fighting an enormous magical beast. When he saw one of them, he became incredibly excited. Fuck! This time I've caught you. There were over 10 experts fighting against an armored lizard. That armored lizard was a mile long and covered in powerful scales. Its huge tail was like a whip that crumbled mountains when it struck. It was actually extremely amazing, and it was forcing those 10+ experts to miserably retreat. The intense battle had already changed the terrain in the mountain range. Those people were all experts amongst experts. All of them were at least rank 2 celestials, and there were even 3 rank 3 celestials. Amongst them was Long Chen's old friend, Shuiyu. Shuiyu was surrounded by 3 different runes that released a torrential aura. On his own, Shuiyu was blocking the majority of the armored lizard's attacks. The other 2 rank 3 celestials were in charge of restricting it at the sides, while the rank 2 celestials could only occasionally launch attacks when they had an opening. But their attacks were clearly unable to cause much damage to the armored lizard. What? Do you recognize them? Asked the Eastern Wasteland Belle. They're my mortal enemies. Long Chun nodded. He rapidly thought up a plan. Senior, are you capable of concealing my aura? Something as minor as that is simple. But are you planning on sneak attacking him once I conceal your aura? Let me warn you, That long-haired fellow is not so simple. He's an innate rank 3 celestial, and he's already begun condensing his 4th heavenly Dao rune. His odds of one day becoming a rank 4 celestial are practically 100%. Your chances of successfully sneak attacking him are very low. It's too risky, warned the Eastern Wasteland Belle. Long Chen smiled. That's fine. It's not my first time coming into contact with him. That last battle was truly sullen. But this time I'll have a proper battle with him. Last time he acted like such a poser. Now it's time for me to get my revenge. Thinking of how Shui Yu had acted as if he was a supreme overlord, as if he could crush him with a wave of his hand, Long Chen was extremely irritated. He had his own pride. Such humiliation and contempt were something that infuriated Long Chen. But back then, he hadn't had the qualifications to be infuriated. However, today would be different. So are you planning on sneak attacking him? Asked the Eastern Wasteland Belle. No, he doesn't have the qualifications to make me sneak attack him. I want to kill him with my true strength. Furthermore, I'm not very good at assassinations. As soon as I attack, I won't be able to conceal my killing intent, and I'll be sensed. Failing an assassination attempt is too embarrassing, so I'd prefer to fight him head-on. I'll have more confidence that way. Then why have me conceal your aura? I have something more important that I want to do. At that time, you just have to work together with me. Long Chen laughed mischievously, a crafty light shining in his eyes. Boom! Shui Yu's black sword slashed onto the armored lizard's head. That immense force sent its head slamming into the ground, causing the ground to sink once more. Careful! Shui Yu suddenly shouted. With its head smashed into the ground, the armored lizard's huge tail wildly swung without any pattern. As a result, one rank 2 celestial didn't dodge in time and was struck by the tail. A terrifying force directly blew him into a bloody mist. Long Chen couldn't help being startled. Just what level was this armored lizard? It seemed it wasn't lacking compared to Meng Qi's red-eye sacred blood phoenix. What he didn't know was that this armored lizard was actually a mutated magical beast. Its original bloodline was substandard, but after mutating, its combat power had become terrifying. It could be ranked as an overlord amongst rank 7 magical beasts. With its mutated runes on its scales, even Shui Yu's sword was unable to break through its defenses, and Shui Yu's sword was a treasure item. It was precisely because it was so powerful that Shui Yu had been delighted to find it. He had been willing to spend a great deal of time baiting it out of its lair so he could capture it as his house pet. In truth, while the armored lizard was powerful, it had one fatal weak point. There was a white scale between its eyes. That scale was similar to a dragon's reverse scale. That scale was its only weak point. If they concentrated their attacks on it, then killing it wouldn't be very difficult. After all, it was a magical beast with an impure bloodline. Even if it had mutated, it hadn't been able to completely erase its innate weak point. But that wasn't something bad to Shui Yu. When he fought against others, he would stand at that scale to protect it. Then there would be no weak points. With the two of them combined, they would be like tigers with wings. Their power would reach a whole new level. So Shui Yu intentionally avoided that fatal spot. He wanted to use power to subdue it and then place a slave mark. If he used a curse to weaken it, then even once he forcibly placed the slave mark, it wouldn't be convinced of his power. Then it would continuously try to fight back. If he had to stop it from fighting him during a battle, capturing it would have no meaning. However, if he used power to subdue it before making it his house pet, such a house pet would be afraid, and the chances of it fighting back were lower. After that, by acting good to the magical beast for a while, lowering its guard, they could properly fight together. Shui Yu's runes surged as he fought. The others had surrounded it, not letting it escape. If it fled to its lair, all their previous efforts would be wasted. Seeing Shui Yu's power, Long Chen was startled. It seemed he was even stronger than when he had fought the hidden ground gold spider king. Currently, he hadn't even released his full power, but each of his attacks was incredible. Long Chen suddenly thought of the Eastern Wasteland Belle's words, as well as how Shui Yu had tried to become a rank 4 celestial in the trial caves. The Eastern Wasteland Bell had said that Shui Yu was already in the process of becoming a rank 4 celestial. Although he was still just in that process, his power was already so high. Once he succeeded, wouldn't he be unrivaled? They fought for over 2 hours. The armored lizard was clearly unable to defeat Shui Yu. That was because its strongest aspect was its defense, and it didn't have any long-range attacks. Its huge body had become its weakness now, as it was unable to reach Shui Yu. To it, Shui Yu was too small and fast of a target. It tried to flee several times, but the others had tightly surrounded it and refused to allow it to pass. As a result, after all this time, it had exhausted all of its energy. Without any energy to struggle, it lay on the ground. Although it possessed a fierce and savage temperament, it knew it was done for today. Ha ha ha, there's no need to be afraid. I won't kill you. In the future, you'll buy this lord's house pet, laughed Shui Yu excitedly. After hours of fighting, after striking it with so many attacks from his black sword, he saw that there was very little damage to its scales. There wasn't even any blood. His defense was truly unrivaled. What he needed was a house pet with unrivaled defense. His Yama King blood curse took time to use, and it was easy to interrupt. But with the armored lizard protecting him, who could interrupt him? At that time, he would be able to use that curse as he pleased. Long Chun suddenly asked the Eastern Wasteland Bell, "Senior, what does this lord mean? Is that a very badass appellation?" "Cough, this question of yours is a bit awkward," coughed the Eastern Wasteland Bell. It had also once called itself this lord in front of Long Chun. At that time, thinking of its own status, the Eastern Wasteland Bell was clearly much higher than Long Chun. After all, an existence like it was something Long Chun had to look up to, so it had naturally called itself this lord. But who would have thought that Long Chun possessed such an incredibly terrifying existence within him? So it no longer called itself this lord. Furthermore, it had found that in front of Long Chun, it had no qualifications to be arrogant. So now that Long Chun asked this, it immediately became embarrassed. He has begun placing the slave mark. "Senior, help me conceal my aura. I want to give my old friend a pleasant surprise." After saying that, Long Chun began stealthily creeping his way closer. The armored lizard was huge, and so it blocked the other's line of sight. When the slave mark was being placed, the armored lizard once more began struggling, but it had already exhausted all its energy. And under everyone's combined suppression, the slave mark smoothly entered. "Ha ha ha, from today onwards, I, Shui Yu, will dominate the immemorial path. Who could possibly contend against me?" Shui Yu excitedly roared after placing the slave mark. "Congratulations, Lord Shui Yu, on obtaining an unrivaled steed." The people around him immediately respectfully flattered him. "Ha ha ha, Devil Empress Yuan, you've suppressed me for so long. Today, I'll be turning the tables. Is the corrupt path something that can be led by a woman like you?" sneered Shui Yu. As soon as he mentioned the Devil Empress Yuan, the others shivered in fear. They were clearly terrified of that Devil Empress. "You don't need to be afraid. Lang Yuan is claimed to be number 1 in close-range combat. But that just happens to be my weakness. That's the only reason she suppressed me. But now that I have the armored lizard, as long as she can't break its defenses for a moment, I'll be able to force her to her death," said Shui Yu confidently. "That's true. This armored lizard's defense can truly be described as unrivaled. Even your treasure item was unable to break its defenses," said a rank 2 celestial. "If I had used my full strength to activate the treasure item, then this armored lizard would only have been able to block 3 of my attacks. But that's already enough. As long as it can block a single attack, I'll have achieved my goal. In terms of defense, this mutated magical beast is definitely number 1 amongst 7th rank magical beasts," claimed Shui Yu arrogantly. "Is that so? I don't really believe that. Let me try it." A lazy voice rang out from the top of the armored lizard's head. Seeing the owner of that voice, Shui Yu's expression completely changed. At some unknown point, Long Chun had appeared on top of the armored lizard's head. He winked at Shui Yu while leaning on an unremarkable sword. "Long Chun." Seeing Long Chun, especially that evil smile on his face. An extremely bad feeling arose in Shui Yu's heart. After hearing you brag about it so much and for so long, I don't even know if you're telling the truth or not anymore. So let me test it. Long Chen smiled, and just like that, he stabbed his sword at the armored lizard. The place he was standing on was precisely its fatal weak point. Furthermore, the armored lizard had just had a slave mark placed on it. Its soul was damaged, and it was in a semi-conscious state. It wasn't able to sense the danger. Bastard, don't dash. Stop. Stay your hand. The corrupt experts immediately panicked. They all recognized Long Chen, so seeing him here, his goal was all too obvious. Don't stop? Of course, there's no way to stop now, laughed Long Chen. Flying rainbow suddenly blossomed with light. It was like a blazing sun, and an incredibly sharp aura erupted as it directly pierced the armored lizard's head. Long Chen had activated Flying Rainbow's sword light. Long Chen was now capable of connecting to Flying Rainbow's item spirit, but because its spirit had been in slumber for so long, he was only able to release a portion of its power. However, that was enough. This attack didn't just pierce the armored lizard's head, but it also directly shattered its crystal core. His body twitched and then never moved again. Shui Yu and the others were simply stunned for a moment. They had worked so hard for quite a few days to draw it here. They had just subdued it when it was killed. Cough. I'm so sorry. I actually ended up killing it, but you can't blame it on me. Previously, you bragged about it so much that I thought it was super amazing, but as a result... Long Chen shrugged and innocently said, well, if it's dead, it's dead. Let's not quibble about it so much. Try to restrain your grief. I wouldn't want you to cry over this corpse, so I'll just take it for you. Well, I still have some stuff to do, so I won't accompany you any longer. Long Chen directly took the armored lizard's corpse. A 7th-rank magical beast's corpse was a treasure for him. You want to run? Leave your life behind first. The veins on Shui Yu's forehead were about to explode, and his eyes were about to spit flames. But he wasn't even able to speak right now. It was the others who felt that something was off and surrounded Long Chen. Looking at Shui Yu's expression, Long Chen couldn't help laughing. That expression of his looked like he had just drunk a jug of excrement. Even his face was turning purple. His body was quivering. To turn the acclaimed corrupt king who dominated countless geniuses into this state, even Long Chen had to admire his own abilities. He really was talented. You can still laugh. I'll tear you to pieces, roared Shui Yu. His hair was standing on end, and the killing intent in his eyes was as sharp as a blade. His hatred had reached a kind of peak. He had an urge to bite Long Chen to death. Countless black runes lit up on his sword, and black chi erupted as he charged at Long Chen. Boom! The ground was split open where Shui Yu's sword landed. Endless dust erupted into the air. However, Long Chen's figure vanished. Was he killed in one blow? The corrupt experts were startled. Shui Yu's sword had struck so quickly without accumulating the slightest energy, but it was still immensely powerful. That was the terror of Shui Yu. Suddenly, muffled bangs rang out. They were horrified. Careful! A ghost-like figure dashed amongst their midst, his sword flowing like water. Each strike represented another expert that was blown to bits. Everyone, retreat! Shouted Shui Yu, appalled by Long Chen's speed. He was so fast that even Shui Yu couldn't clearly see his figure. His black sword suddenly stabbed toward Long Chen. Don't be so anxious. I'll clean up these hindrances before having a proper battle with you. Long Chen's figure once more disappeared. Each strike of his sword was as fast as lightning. With his lightning body blink, there was no one who could resist. In just a few blinks of an eye, other than rank 3 celestials, the rest had all been killed. Long Chen was just too fast. By the time they saw him appear beside them, they had already been struck by his sword. Long Chen's power flowed within his sword, and when it entered their bodies, it was like explosives detonating. Their bodies instantly exploded, and there was no chance to use the heavenly Tao recovery. Bastard, die! Yu was completely infuriated. These were the new subordinates he had just gathered. His old subordinates had been mostly killed by the hidden ground gold Spider King. Now his new subordinates that were loyal and powerful were once more killed because of Long Chen. His fury peaked. But with the lightning body blink, Long Chen's afterimages filled the air. He was too fast and no one was able to track him. Suddenly, sword light flashed. A rank 3 celestial, despite being on his highest guard, still had his head severed. He barely had a chance to scream before a lightning arrow caused his head to explode. Even his soul didn't have a chance to flee. One rank 3 celestial was now dead. The other one immediately panicked. He felt endless killing intent enveloping him. It was like the gaze of the Grim Reaper had finally landed on him. No matter how he tried, no matter how hard he struggled, he wouldn't be able to escape. His death was fated now. Lord Corrupt King, save Dash. In his terror, that rank 3 celestial actually did an extremely stupid thing. He actually gave up his defense and started running toward Yu. But that created an opening, and Long Chen pounced on it. He was killed in one blow. The world returned to calm. Those afterimages disappeared to be replaced by Long Chen calmly standing there. His sword pointed toward the ground. A drop of blood fell from his sword. That sound was very light, but it represented that another rank 3 celestial's life had ended. Long Chen swung his sword up. He almost slashed his own sword onto his shoulder by habit. But his sword was double-edged, and resting it on his shoulder was extremely stupid. Even if he laid it on the flat side, it would still feel strange. It would look similar to a suicide posture. Long Chen was a bit unused to this kind of feeling. Yu, we weren't able to have a true battle at the trial caves last time. But now you can bring out your full power. Let me see just how much ability you have. Let's see if it'll be like you said back then, that even if I was at full power, I still wouldn't be able to last 10 exchanges with you. Long Chen pointed his sword at Yu. That was what Yu had said back in the trial caves. Long Chen still hadn't forgotten his tone and expression. He returned his words back at him perfectly. Divine Ring. For star battle armor. The void trembled. The ground split apart as Long Chen's aura erupted, causing heaven and earth to change color. As I thought, it's that. Long Chen's just an ordinary person. Why would he be chosen by a legendary existence? Just what happened to this world? Did that matter back then really happen? The Eastern Wasteland Bell wondered to itself as it watched everything from Long Chen's mind see. The Enlightenment Palace star poured forth a raging power, and Long Chen's aura spiked to an unprecedented level. Yu's expression suddenly changed. He hadn't expected Long Chen to be so powerful. With a furious roar, an immense image appeared behind him. That image was of a fiend's face. Blood devil possession. That fiendish face merged with Yu's body. His long hair began to float as his aura also erupted. It was like a devil king had been born. Split the heavens. Long Chen immediately unleashed one of his ultimate moves. Facing Yu, he didn't dare to be the slightest bit careless. He had to go all out. Sword light pierced the sky and then mercilessly slashed down. Yu was instantly locked by a terrifying aura. His expression was grave as he raised his own sword. Holding it with both hands, his third eye suddenly opened. A ray of black light shot into the sword. His sword seemed to come alive. A pillar of black light soared and an incredibly sinister aura erupted. It was like a sword that had come from hell. Devil Void Breaking Slash. Black and white sword light slammed into each other. The ground rapidly sank as countless cracks spread into the distance. Chi waves erupted, shaking the land within 1,000 miles. Yu and Long Chen were both sent flying. But Yu suddenly felt his hair stand on end as a sensation of death enveloped him. Without even thinking about it, he dodged to the side. A cold sword touched his shoulder. Although the tip only broke the skin, an explosive force shattered his shoulder. His arm almost went flying as blood erupted. Long Chen's original goal hadn't been to kill Yu with his first move, but to rely on the shockwaves from the first move to launch a sudden attack with the lightning body blink. However, Yu was a true expert and he had sensed it. This attack only gave him an injury that couldn't count as particularly heavy. Devil Eye exterminates the world. Shui Yu's third eye suddenly opened again. An array of light shot at Long Chun. The two of them were too close. Although Long Chun had known that Shui Yu could release attacks with his third eye, this attack had come too suddenly. There was no time for him to dodge. Thunder force circulated as Long Chen's fist smashed into that ray of light. The light shattered, but Long Chen's hand was also turned into meat pulp. What power! Long Chen was shocked. He had already protected himself with his thunder force, but this attack had still destroyed his hand. It had to be known that his current power was much, much greater than before. The Enlightenment Palace star had reached the 8th star transformation, and his physical body had been greatly strengthened, to the point that it was several times stronger than before. But he was still injured. However, this kind of injury was instantly healed with the primal chaos bead. He sheathed his sword behind his back and rapidly formed hand seals. Double Dragon Destruction. A lightning and flame dragon shot out, roaring furiously. Shui Yu's expression changed. This attack's power was something he had personally experienced. Even back then, it had caused him a great deal of trouble. Now Long Chun was using it at full power, and its power caused his scalp to turn numb. Shui Yu suddenly took out a bone. That bone was glossy like jade, but it was covered in lines. It released an evil air. It looked to be a human skull. As soon as it left Shui Yu's hand, it began to grow, becoming hundreds of meters tall. Boom! The two dragons crashed into the skull. The skull instantly shattered. Following that, endless devil chi transformed into a black monster that fought against them. Long Chun was startled. This skull had actually been sealing a soul that was capable of fighting. But Long Chun was still confident. That soul might be extremely powerful, but it was suppressed by Lei Long and Huolong. There was no danger to them. As long as they were given enough time, they would be able to defeat it. In truth, Shui Yu was quite distressed. That skull was something he had obtained from an ancient devil skeleton. Inside had been the slightest discarnate soul. Shui Yu had constantly fed living people's souls to it for it to become stronger. As long as it was given enough spiritual strength, it would have eventually become an exceedingly terrifying existence. But nourishing such a soul was extremely dangerous. He definitely couldn't allow it to become stronger than himself, or there was a danger of it taking over his body. So once that soul grew close enough to his own power, he would stop feeding it. Once he broke through to see expansion, he would have continued feeding its souls and raising its power. But the double dragon destruction Long Chun had released wasn't a battle skill. He was letting those two existences within him freely attack. Even if he could block their first attack, they would constantly entangle him, and with Long Chen's ghost-like movement art, his life would be in danger. So despite knowing that it would be restricted, Shui Yu had still sacrificed this soul to hold back Lei Long and Huolong. It was his only choice, or he would definitely be defeated today. The thing that startled both Long Chun and Shui Yu was that the soul had only appeared for a moment before a strange energy caused it to explode. Then it just disappeared. What just happened? Shui Yu was appalled, filled with disbelief. As for Long Chun, just as he was stunned, the Eastern Wasteland Bell's voice rang out in his mind. Hee, that was not bad. It was quite nourishing, even if it was so little. The Eastern Wasteland Bell possessed its own item spirit. It could be considered a spiritual existence, and after this many years, it had reached its limit. Having run out of energy, it had been close to dissipating. The experts that Long Chun had previously killed had had their souls absorbed by it before they could dissipate. Those were treasures that could help it heal. However, compared to the soul beast, those souls had been nothing more than appetizers. This soul was the main course, and it would allow it to recover a bit of its power. Seeing his soul beast disappear, Shui Yu was stunned. But Long Chun quickly recovered and he flashed into motion, his sword arriving right next to Shui Yu. Shui Yu hastily blocked. There was no time for him to bother about what had happened with the soul beast. But just as he blocked Long Chen's sword, Lei Long and Huolong also roared and attacked him. Shui Yu chose to block Long Chen's sword. As a result, Lei Long and Huolong struck him, causing him to vomit blood and shoot back. He was like a meteorite and he left a huge crater in the ground. Dust erupted. You want to run? Leave your life behind first. Long Chen snorted. He slashed his sword down. Sword light pierced the ground. Boom! A long gorge appeared in the ground. A miserable figure flew out, vomiting blood. The instant Shui had been sent crashing into the ground. He had used the earth to conceal the fact that he was preparing to flee. But with Long Chen's divine sense locked onto him, was it possible he would give him that chance? Furthermore, Long Chen knew that this fellow was extremely powerful. He wouldn't run just like this. In truth, he should be trying to gain distance to use some sort of secret art. Having seen through that, he ruined his plan with a slash of his sword. Long Chen chased after Shuiyu. Lei Long and Huolong were rumbling in the air, accompanying him in attacking Shuiyu, causing him to appear extremely miserable. Corrupt spirit space lock. Shuiyu suddenly shouted and formed hand seals. That image of a fiend's face once more appeared, and Long Chen felt as if space had frozen. It was like he had been encased in an iceberg. Humph! Long Chen snorted and circulated the primal chaos bead. He unleashed the full power of his physical body. Cracks like ice shattering appeared in the air. The spatial strength confining Long Chen broke. Split the heavens. Long Chen didn't hesitate. Sword Chi slashed forward. The split the heavens battle skill could be used with a sword or saber. Although he was a bit unused to using a sword, he had to admit that using a sword allowed him to unleash split the heavens faster. It was just that it didn't have enough power behind it. However, that was made up for with flying rainbow's sharpness. His power was still incredible. Shuiyu hadn't expected Long Chen to break free from his lock so easily. Before he could finish his new hand seals, Long Chen's attack had already arrived. He hastily broke off his hand seals and blocked with his sword. Shuiyu once more vomited blood and flew back. He couldn't help groaning. This time it had not been a light injury. You want to unleash a curse right in front of me? Long Chen sneered. From the moment Shuiyu had charged underground and fled, Long Chen had guessed what he was thinking. The corrupt path's curses were extremely difficult to deal with. Last time, Long Chen had been weakened into a dog by a curse and almost lost his life. Did Shuiyu think he wouldn't be on guard against it this time? As soon as Shuiyu had used that spatial magical art, Long Chen had guessed he was trying to stall to activate a curse. So he hadn't hesitated. And as expected, this fellow had been in the midst of activating a curse. But it was interrupted midway, which definitely would have caused a backlash. This particular curse had a short activation time, so it definitely hadn't reached the level of the Yama King blood curse. But it still wouldn't be good to be struck by it. Long Chen couldn't help but feel lucky. It was no wonder that Shuiyu so desperately wanted that armored lizard. If he had the defense of the armored lizard, and he protected the weak point at its forehead, Shuiyu would be able to freely release curses from the armored lizard's back. This fellow was actually not skilled in close-range combat. Instead, he specialized in long-range curses. It was no wonder he was constantly trying to gain distance. Thinking of that, Long Chen knew that he definitely couldn't allow that to happen. Experiencing a curse once was enough. He activated the lightning body blink, chasing after Shuiyu. But Shuiyu's movement art was also extremely fast, as dozens of miles were traversed in an instant. However, in front of the lightning body blink, that speed wasn't enough. Long Chen still caught up. Shuiyu not only had to block Long Chen's sudden attacks, but he also had to block Lei Long and Huolong. His black sword was dancing through the air as he miserably fled, occasionally coughing up blood. His strongest points were his magical arts and curses. Those two things required forming hand seals and drawing heaven and earth's energy. They also needed time to use. This was also why Long Chen hadn't used the Raging Flame Prison. Magical arts might be limitlessly powerful, but in a true battle they didn't have much use, especially in a one-against-one. It was difficult to get a chance to use them. In a life-and-death battle, who would just stand there and watch you unleash your ultimate move? That kind of situation would only occur on the martial arenas of those large sections. Those incomparable geniuses might be able to use them then, but not in a battle. A true battle changed in the blink of an eye, and the slightest mistake could lead to a defeat. This kind of battle always relied on experience and smarts. In Long Chen's eyes, those competitions on martial arenas were no different than cockfighting. They were competing over who was more ornamental and whose moves looked more beautiful. To put it frankly, it was a competition of who was more of an idiot. Although he currently had the advantage, the slightest mistake could lead to him being struck by Xueyu's curse. Then that would very likely lead to a complete reversal, and the one to die in the end would be him. So in a fight against experts like Xueyu, you couldn't reveal the slightest opening. In the same way, Xueyu also wouldn't reveal any openings to him. In this kind of battle, that kind of opening signified the end of the battle. While Xueyu fled and fought, he had no choice but to admit that he wasn't Long Chen's match when it came to close-range fighting. He was searching for an opportunity as he fled. "This is your so-called unable to endure 10 exchanges?" sneered Long Chen as he forced Xueyu to run. However, although he had taken the advantage, he was shocked by how strong Xueyu was. Even in this kind of situation, he was unable to find an opening to take his life. Furthermore, he didn't dare to be greedy and force it. He had to take it steadily. In this kind of high-speed chase, if he tried to unleash one of his ultimate moves, it would create a gap between them. Either Xueyu would get away, or he would unleash a curse. So Long Chen was also in a difficult situation. He had to continue chasing and attack Xueyu, or once he opened up the distance, he would be the one in danger. Hearing Long Chen's sneer, Xueyu's face became burning hot. Thinking of his big words, they were like a slap in his face now. "Bastard, you are courting death!" roared Xueyu. Long Chen was speechless to see that this idiot actually tossed out some vicious words before continuing to flee. Long Chen was chasing Xueyu. He had lightning wings on his back, and there were lightning whirlpools in his body. His speed far surpassed Xueyu, but Xueyu refused to face him head-on. When Long Chen tried to use one of his powerful moves, Xueyu would always use some sort of secret art to escape his lock. If he couldn't lock down his opponent, then the chances of failure were just too high. No matter how strong the technique, if it was unable to hit your opponent, then it was useless. The two of them were deadlocked, fighting as they traveled. Sword Chi flew, mountains collapsed. It was an amazing and imposing sight. Xueyu had tried activating his treasure item to run, but Long Chen didn't give him any chance to do so. Furthermore, Xueyu was also unwilling to flee just like this. He was trying to find an opportunity to kill Long Chen. As a generation's genius, he definitely wouldn't allow himself to be defeated so easily. As the two of them fought, they startled countless people searching for treasures. The two of them were like shooting stars. Rumbling filled the air wherever they passed, and mountains split in front of them. Those people all felt their scalps turn numb upon seeing that. Who are those two? What level of battle is this? Heavens! Isn't that the corrupt path's supreme expert, the corrupt King Xueyu? Xueyu, one of the corrupt path's top 2 experts, claimed to be unrivaled? The one who has never been beaten in the same realm. Are you telling stories? Never been beaten in the same realm? Then what is happening right here? It looks like Xueyu's the one who's been beaten into a dog. He's covered in blood and running. That doesn't count as a loss. Damn! Who is that person? When did our righteous path give birth to such a terrifying figure? Isn't that Long Chen? Heavens! It really is senior apprentice brother Long Chen. 2 righteous disciples let out a startled cry upon seeing Long Chen's face. They were disciples from the sects subordinate to the Shantian Dao sect. Before entering, they had seen Long Chen. Back then, Long Chen had been quite low-key, perfectly content to let Shui Guanji and the other 4 heavenly geniuses hog the spotlight. But later, the remote heaven gang had provoked them, and even the feather races Yu Changhao and the Bloodkill Hall's Huang Junmo had pointed their spears at him. He had become the focus, so everyone who had been there now recognized him. However, the Eastern Wasteland's righteous path had 2 large entrances to the immemorial path. There were also quite a few unpopular smaller entrances, so not everyone recognized Long Chen. Those who recognized him had thought that Long Chun would be doomed after so many experts had singled him out as their targets. But now Long Chun was incredibly imposing. His sword light was brilliant and powerful, even forcing the corrupt path's Xueyu to flee so miserably. Their jaws almost fell to the ground at the sight of this. Brandishing his sword with his two dragons roaring around him, Long Chen's aura was like a furious dragon that couldn't be stopped. That unrivaled Xueyu was forced to flee like a dog. Lord Xueyu, Guili has come to help. Suddenly, a man from the corrupt path appeared. He was extremely tall and sturdy. He held a spiked club that he smashed at Long Chen. An image of a giant appeared behind him. With each step he took, the ground quivered. A rank 3 celestial. The hidden spectators were all startled. Within that illusory giant, there were 3 different runes circulating. Once he joined hands with Xueyu, would Long Chen be the one forced to run? Long Chen was also startled. Now it was troublesome. If it was at an ordinary time, he might not care about such a person. But this was a critical moment and he could cause a big problem. Die! Corrupt energy mountain splitting club. That corrupt expert raised his spiked club while he was still in the distance. The illusory giant behind also followed his actions, raising its own spiked club. Suddenly, their 2 bodies superimposed. An image of a huge club covered in runes whistled down. The spectators were all horrified. This was a rank 3 celestial's full-strength attack. Whoever touched it would die. But they saw that Long Chen didn't seem to have any intention of dodging. In truth, Long Chen also thought of dodging as he didn't want to waste his energy. But if he dodged the first move, that expert would have an opening to release a rain of unending attacks on him. That would be even more troublesome. Split the heavens. Sword Chi soared into the heavens. A domineering will erupted. In that instant the world seemed to freeze. Boom! The sword fell. People were only able to see a sky full of runes erupt, the ground shatter, and endless waves of dust and earth fly. It was those with the stronger cultivation bases that were appalled. That was because they were the first to sense that the club-bearing corrupt expert's aura had disappeared. And for his aura to disappear now, there was only one possibility. That was that he had been killed. He had still been one-shot despite using his full strength. No one could believe this result. That was a rank 3 celestial, one of the peak experts currently on the immemorial path. But there was no choice but to believe it. When the dust scattered, the corrupt expert's corpse had truly disappeared. Only the scent of blood still lingered in the air. After killing him, Long Chen was also blown back. This was all Xueyu needed to distance himself. Lei Long, Hualong, quickly kill him. Long Chen immediately had a bad feeling. He hastily had Lei Long and Hualong attack Xueyu. It was too late for him to reach him now. Xueyu was already rapidly forming hand seals. Ha ha ha! It's too late. You can die now. Hell poison curse. Xueyu laughed. He had finally obtained the opportunity he had been looking for. Black blood dripped down from his third eye, and a bizarre image appeared in front of him. In the blink of an eye, the mist began to billow toward Long Chun. That black mist was countless tiny runes. When they passed through Lei Long and Hualong, Lei Long didn't react, but black smoke began to emit from Hualong's body. This curse is afraid of fire. Long Chun was delighted to see this, but he also didn't dare to be careless. He knew that those curse runes were extremely domineering. Even just getting infected by the slightest bit of them would cause him to be cursed. It had nothing to do with how many he was touched by. Their immense number was just to increase the odds of succeeding. Suddenly, Hualong disappeared and a huge flame sphere appeared in Long Chen's hand. Little Snow. Little Snow appeared behind Long Chen. He shot out a sphere of wind blades that enveloped Long Chen's flame sphere. The 2 of them were once more releasing their combined wind flame attack. Boom! When the flames borrowed the power of the wind, their range increased explosively. Those black runes of Xueyu were all incinerated into black smoke. As soon as Xueyu had released the Hell Poison Curse, he had begun forming new hand seals. The Hell Poison Curse was just an irritant. It made poisonous insects appear within a person's blood. It would consume that blood and then become parasites within the body. But that kind of curse could only affect average experts. Shui hadn't had any hopes of this curse stopping Long Chun. All he wanted was for it to stall for a bit. While Long Chun wiped away those runes, he would unleash his second curse. Just as Shui was about to unleash his second curse, Lei Long appeared by his side. It crazily attacked him, and making it so he was unable to complete the hand seals. In his fury, he unstintingly spent his core runic energy to form a barrier around him. It temporarily held back Lei Long while he continued forming hand seals. When Long Chun released that wind flame combination attack, Shui had reached the final stages of his second attack. A blood-red rune appeared in front of his body, and it possessed an extremely corrosive aura. It was an exceedingly powerful weakening curse and was much stronger than the one Long Chun had been afflicted with. Once Long Chun was struck, he would be weaker than a dog. However, this curse required a long time to activate. That time was what the Hell Poison curse had bought for him. "You can die now," Hell Blood Shui shouted, pushing the rune in front of him forward. But before that rune could fly out, a chilling light flashed through Shui's back. His neck was directly severed. At the same time, it severed his curse. "You really should die now," Long Chun snorted. It really had been too dangerous just now. If he had been the slightest bit slower, the consequences would have been dire. Fortunately, he had made it. After slicing off Shui's head, Long Chun didn't hesitate. Flying Rainbow slashed down on Shui's head. He would completely kill him. "Keep dreaming. Blood sacrifice ghost sword." Shui roared furiously. Instantly, his black sword appeared in front of him, and it immediately absorbed all the blood Shui was bleeding. Buzz! The black sword rapidly grew to a length of 300 meters. A sinister aura erupted from it as it slashed down on Long Chun. Long Chun was startled. He didn't know how Shui had done this, but he had actually activated his treasure item's power. That was beyond imagination. It had to be known that treasure items were weapons for ancestors. Although people like them were capable of using them, they were unable to bring out a treasure item's true power. That power was beyond their ability to control. The huge black sword was surrounded by revolving black chi. What sounded like the cries of millions of ghosts came from it. This sword demanded Long Chun's life. It was unavoidable. Long Chun had never expected Shui to possess such a move. In truth, this trump card was something Shui would never use unless he had no alternative. He had sacrificed his own blood to activate a trace of his treasure item's power. He had no choice now or he would die. Just as Long Chun was facing a treasure item's attack, Flying Rainbow suddenly left his hand. It turned into streaking rainbow light that slashed onto the black sword. Boom! The two immense blades collided. When those two immense blades collided, the entire world seemed to become dark. That was because that collision caused heaven and earth to lose all their light. There was no sound for thousands of miles. Long Chun was horrified. Just now, he hadn't done anything at all. It was like Flying Rainbow had been provoked and automatically released its own power in response. As for Shui, his head had already reattached to his body. He was also looking up in horror. He had never imagined that Long Chun could activate a treasure item's power without sacrificing anything. It had to be known that he had sacrificed all the blood from when Long Chun had cut off his head to activate his black sword's power. This black sword was one of the Corrupt Path's treasure items. Shui had been nourishing it for many years, but even he still needed to sacrifice his essence blood to activate it. A treasure item had its own item spirit, its own intelligence, as well as its own pride. According to reason, without reaching at least C expansion, there was no way to activate a treasure item. But there were all sorts of secret arts in this world. For example, Shui had formed a contract with his treasure item. The treasure item felt that its owner was a bit weak, but it depended on his essence blood, so it was willing to listen to his orders. But Shui had still paid a steep price to activate this attack. The majority of his essence blood had been sucked away just now. On the other hand, Long Chun hadn't sacrificed anything. But that sword had voluntarily released its power to fight for him. That kind of treatment was immensely different. Limitless power was colliding in the air. The spectators were all horrified. It looked as if it was the end of the world. They began to hastily flee. Boom! The two blades blossomed with a light brighter than the sun. A terrifying energy was pouring out from the core of the two blades. The light was rapidly growing. In front of that light, mountains were instantly blown to smithereens. Some of the closer experts didn't even have a chance to make a sound before being blown into bloody mist. The two treasure items had released their power. Everything within thousands of miles was razed, and everything that light touched was destroyed. Even Long Chun was wildly vomiting blood. He felt like his body was being torn apart. He was appalled. This was a treasure item's true power? It was truly too terrifying. It was a good thing he had the primal chaos space. His injuries were rapidly healing. With the spirit world's immense trees, he was able to heal even heavenly Tao injuries. After releasing their powerful attack, both treasure items returned to their normal size and flew back to their owners. In that previous collision, there had been no winner. Long Chun didn't wait for Flying Rainbow to return. He shot forward, grabbing it on the way. Shui Yu was in the midst of recovering. He still hadn't recovered from his shock, but the battle-hardened Long Chun wouldn't let this opportunity escape him. Sword light slashed down mercilessly. Shui Yu sensed him immediately, but Long Chun was too fast. He rapidly retreated but was still too slow. Flying Rainbow slashed down, severing his leg. Although Shui Yu had managed to preserve his life, he had lost a limb. Shui Yu was fortunate he was strong enough. When Flying Rainbow had pierced his body, his runes had held back a portion of its power. Otherwise, that slash wouldn't have cut off just one of his legs. Instead, it would have destroyed all his lower body. Heavenly Tao recovered. Countless runes flew to that severed leg. Fuck off! Would Long Chun give him that opportunity? He directly grabbed the leg, not letting him reattach it. His sword once more slashed down. Boom! Shui Yu hastily dodged with his sword. As a result, he was sent flying without a leg. Unable to keep his balance, he tumbled across the ground. Hand over your other 4 limbs as well. Long Chun shot after him, stabbing his sword at him. But when Shui Yu blocked it, Long Chun swung his other hand. A bloody leg slapped across Shui Yu's face. Shui Yu was sent flying by his own leg. He tumbled across the ground, appearing incredibly wretched. Their previous collision of treasure items had killed quite a few of the spectators. But for many of them, it was unlikely they would ever get another chance to see a battle on this level. So there were still quite a few people continuing to watch despite the danger. Seeing Long Chun sever Shui Yu's leg, they felt a chill. He was truly ruthless. Then seeing Long Chun draw Shui Yu's attention with the sword in his right hand only to slap him with his own leg from his other hand. Their eyes almost popped out. They had never seen such a fighting style. Long Chun, just wait. I'll repay this enmity to you 1,000,000 times. Not just you, but everyone close to you, your sect. I'll refine all their souls and make it so they can never reincarnate. Shui Yu was forced to desperation by Long Chun. In his fury, he slashed apart the leg in Long Chun's hand. To personally destroy his own leg gave him a sour feeling. Perhaps only Shui Yu could understand that feeling. Although Shui Yu was a rank 3 celestial, regenerating a leg would not only require time, but it would also require a great deal of his core energy. If his body was severed, then he could reconnect it and immediately recover. But if his body had disappeared, there was no way he could reform it instantly. You're still threatening me? Courting a slap. Long Chun furiously attacked, and the only thing remaining in his left hand was a shoe. His sword unleashed a torrent of attacks, forcing the one-legged Shui Yu back miserably. Pow! A clear sound rang out, shaking heaven and earth. Shui Yu spun in circles. By the time he stabilized, the image of a shoe print on his face was extremely clear. Those spectators felt like they were going crazy. The corrupt Path's supreme expert, the corrupt King Shui Yu, had actually been slapped in the face by a shoe. And furthermore, it was his own shoe. Fuck! Your skin really is thick enough. It's thicker than the bottom of a shoe. Looking at the ruined shoe in his hand, Long Chun snorted and tossed it to the ground. He shot forward with his sword. Ah! Shui Yu released a heaven-shaking roar. His hair stood on end, and his eyes were completely scarlet. In all his life he had never been this furious. This humiliation was something he had never imagined would befall him. Long Chun, just wait. If I, Shui Yu, don't kill you, then I'll swear I'm not human. Shui Yu suddenly spat blood onto his sword. His sword shook and turned into a black ray that shot away with him. Everyone's busy and I don't have time to wait. Let's resolve things now. Long Chun sneered. Lightning wings appeared on his back, and the lightning whirlpools in his body fully activated. Shui Yu was relying on the black sword's speed to get away. He had already realized that if they continued, there was no way for him to win. Although he was a bit unwilling, he had no other choice. But he had only just shot off when he suddenly noticed Long Chun had turned into a bolt of lightning that was chasing him. His speed wasn't the slightest bit lower than his black sword. While chasing, Long Chun raised Flying Rainbow, and Sword Chi slashed forward. Even flying didn't affect his attacks. In truth, Long Chun had realized that the lightning body blink's strongest aspect was its rapid speed in one direction. In battle, he normally only used half of the lightning whirlpools while the other half were closed. When he moved forward, he would activate the back half, and when he moved back, he would activate the front half. That was to control the direction of his body. But when rushing long distance in one direction, he could turn all the lightning whirlpools to one direction. That pushed his speed to the peak. Even Long Chun felt that moving this fast was a bit terrifying. If he smashed into a solid mountain like this, perhaps he would be crushed to death. But his speed was truly shocking, and he could even unleash attacks while flying. That stunned Shui Yu. He had activated his treasure item to flee. But at this time, his treasure item was only capable of carrying him. He couldn't use it to defend anymore. He hastily and forcibly switched it from its flying mode to its fighting mode to block. Shui Yu blocked Long Chen's attack, but he vomited blood and shot back like a shooting star. He directly pierced through 7 mountains. Those 7 mountains were fine, but there was a hole with the size of Shui Yu in each of them now. Shui Yu continued flying for many miles, continuously vomiting blood. This attack had almost taken his life. He was finally horrified. He was unable to defeat Long Chen, and now he was unable to flee. A sensation of death welled up from his heart. This was his first time feeling this kind of terror. Just at this moment, Long Chen had already caught up. He once more slashed down with his sword. Shui Yu roared furiously. He couldn't just wait for his death. He once more activated his sword, slashing it at Long Chun. Long Chun was forced back hundreds of meters, while Shui Yu was once more sent flying. Long Chun immediately stabilized himself and shot back toward Shui Yu. Despite taking the absolute advantage, he still didn't dare to be careless. Shui Yu possessed exceedingly terrifying curse arts. Once Long Chun was cursed, this advantage of his would vanish. In fact, the situation would very likely reverse. He couldn't give such a powerful expert any opportunity. Long Chun chased, refusing to allow Shui Yu to have time to form hand seals. But just as he was about to catch up to him, he suddenly noticed a woman not far behind Shui Yu. He was startled and hastily stopped, vigilantly staring at her. This woman's aura was exceedingly terrifying, and it made him feel endless pressure. Furthermore, she was wearing the corrupt path's robes. Lang Yuan. Shui Yu let out a startled cry. Hearing that name, Long Chen's heart shook. He saw that this woman was wearing scarlet, skin-tight robes which revealed all her curves. Her body had practically reached the pinnacle of perfection. Her long hair fell naturally to her waist. That beautiful face was like a flawless jade. But that jade contained endless iciness. The most unforgettable thing about her was her pair of ocean blue eyes. They were like sapphires, yet also like stars in the night sky. Those eyes were beautiful enough to steal a person's soul. However, those beautiful eyes were chilling to the peak. Endless killing intent poured out of them. Shui Yu turned pale as paper when he saw Lang Yuan. His eyes were filled with endless terror, and he hastily fled from her. A sword came out of its sheath. It was like a bolt of lightning slashing through space to reach Shueyu. That dumbfounded Long Chen. What was going on? A single slash of Long Yuyan's sword sealed all the space around Shueyu. She had struck so quickly that even Long Chen hadn't seen how she had moved. Her sword light reached Shueyu in an instant. Shueyu had been prepared and fled as soon as he had seen Lang Yuyan. But even when he tried to block with his sword, he was unable to keep up with Lang Yuyan's demonic speed. His other leg left his body. "You bitch Lang Yuyan, and you bastard Long Chen, just wait. Devil eye blood escape." Shueyu furiously roared. His third eye opened and black blood poured out from it. That blood transformed into runes that wrapped around him. Space twisted, and just like that, he escaped from Long Chen and Lang Yuyan's sight. This was Shueyu's life-saving technique. He wouldn't easily use it because it caused immense injury to his devil eye. In fact, the sequelae might be permanent. But he had no other choice. Seeing that Shueyu was still able to escape in this kind of situation, Long Chen felt a bit powerless. People on this level really weren't easy to deal with. All kinds of techniques poured out of them endlessly. The only thing that he couldn't figure out was how the corrupt King Shueyu and the Devil Empress Lang Yuyan would fight as soon as they saw each other. Weren't they the corrupt path's top experts? Lang Yuyan had clearly been intending on taking Shueyu's life. Just as he was bewildered by this, he saw Lang Yuyan slowly turn back as if Shueyu's escape wasn't the slightest bit out of her expectations. Her sapphire eyes sparkled with an icy light. Being looked at by those eyes, Long Chen had a sensation that all his secrets were being seen through. Seeing her just looking at him, he felt his hair stand on end. Was this an intimidation tactic? Lang Yuyan looked at Long Chen, and Long Chen looked at Lang Yuyan. Long Chen was startled to see that Lang Yuyan was practically not human. She was just too perfect. There wasn't the slightest flaw on her body. Even her eyebrows seemed to be identical down to the hair. She was like the masterpiece of a god. But this unbelievably beautiful woman possessed a terrifying aura. When looking at her, no one would feel any amicability. It was more like they were staring at a goddess of death that would take their life at will. Only now that Lang Yuyan had turned back did Long Chen notice her sword. It sparkled like white jade. It was actually a bone sword. It was unknown whether that bone came from a human or a magical beast. It released a malevolent air as if it had come from hell and thirsted to devour other people's souls. Long Chen quickly scanned all of Lang Yuyan's body. But Lang Yuyan was still just looking at Long Chen without saying a word. Was she trying to compete in terms of stubbornness? Long Chen's guard was raised. Lang Yuyan was an even more terrifying expert than Shueyu, or Shueyu wouldn't be so terrified of her. Lang Yuyan continued to look at Long Chen, and he continued to look back at her. But that tense atmosphere was difficult to endure. Although his opponent was a peerless beauty, he couldn't look at her as a woman. She was definitely a vicious character. Long Chen didn't say anything. This was a silent competition. Whoever got impatient first would fall into the disadvantageous position. "You are Devil Empress Lang Yuyan?" Completely on guard, Long Chen still opened his mouth in the end. Just staying silent like this wasn't a solution. Lang Yuyan was expressionless. Long Chen felt like his robes were being seen through. Her gaze seemed to be able to easily penetrate him. "Are you mute?" Long Chen frowned. But even such a provocation didn't cause any fluctuations in Lang Yuyan. "She is calculating your weakness and habits from your outer form. If you don't take the initiative, her first attack will very likely take your life," said the Eastern Wasteland Belle. "What? How could that be possible?" "The cultivation technique she trains in is different from everyone else. Those eyes of her are called void-piercing eyes. That name comes from how they are able to see through all emptiness, all lies. Through your posture, your movements, the way you hold your sword, how you breathe, your eyes, and even the veins in your muscles, she is able to calculate your habits and find your fatal weaknesses," said the Eastern Wasteland Belle. Long Chen's heart skipped a beat. He hadn't expected Lang Yuyan to be that terrifying. If it weren't for the Eastern Wasteland Belle's warning, he wouldn't have even realized he was already in a disadvantageous position. He immediately took the initiative. As one of the Martial Heaven continent's legendary divine items, he knew the Eastern Wasteland Bell wouldn't trick him over something like this. Furthermore, he was also feeling more and more uneasy, as if danger was getting closer. His sword slashed forth. Lang Yuan also moved, her bone sword shooting forward. Her speed was incredible. She had only just moved when her sword reached its peak speed. Long Chen's hand trembled as he almost lost his grip on his sword. His attack was easily blocked. He hadn't expected Lang Yuan to possess such wrist strength. Using a sword was different from using a saber. A saber relied on brute force, not technique. It relied on using the arm to release the entire body's power. But a sword was much more refined. It relied on subtle changes and variations. It required wrist strength to control those subtle changes, so it had high requirements in that regard. Although Long Chun was using a sword now, in truth, he was simply using his saber techniques. His wrist strength might be strong, but he didn't know anything about controlling those subtle changes. As a result, he immediately lost out in their first exchange. Having his sword blocked, Long Chun immediately knew the situation had turned sour. Lang Yuan's sword was already piercing toward his chest. That speed was so quick that there was no time to react. Long Chun had never fought an opponent with such rapid attacks. His chest was pierced, but he ignored it. His sword was directly slashing at Lang Yuan's waist. No matter how he tried or blocked, it would already be too late. If the power in Lang Yuan's sword was allowed to erupt inside his chest, then even if he didn't die, he would be heavily injured. He could only choose to sacrifice his life to take her life. This was the only method to use when there were no other methods. Lang Yuan was too fast, so fast that it was practically beyond human limits. By the time you saw her move, you would already be struck. Long Chen's chest erupted as Lang Yuan extracted her sword and blocked Long Chen's attack. She had timed everything perfectly. This time, sparks flew and a metallic ringing erupted. It was like that bone blade wasn't bone, but metal. Long Chun had used all his power this time, so Lang Yuan was forced back a few steps. Although Lang Yuan had an advantage in wrist strength in absolute power, she still wasn't his match. Divine Ring. Battle Armor. Long Chun instantly erupted with his strongest power. He changed to wielding his sword with two hands, hacking it down at Lang Yuan. Space rumbled intensely. Long Chun had also seen that Lang Yuan was a close-range fighter. Her combat experience was extremely profound, while he wasn't used to using a sword. If he fought with technique, he would just be courting death. He would have to use his sword as a saber and fight through brute force. He slashed his sword 3 times, each slash stronger than the last. Gale winds erupted and the ground split apart. Lang Yuan was forced back hundreds of meters. The blood netherflower blooms. Nether god summoning. Suddenly her scarlet robes began to drift as if flames were raging inside. Endless runes appeared behind her, showing that she was a rank 3 celestial. A huge flower blossomed on Lang Yuan's forehead. The flower was the shape of a lotus and had 3 colors. At the center there was a blood-red light. An extremely icy aura flowed down the petals and enveloped Lang Yuan's body. It was an extremely beautiful scene. She was a peerlessly beautiful woman, and the 3-colored lotus was surrounded by the mist. She seemed indistinct within that mist, appearing like an immortal. But Long Chun didn't find it beautiful. All he felt was shock. He just realized how terrifying Lang Yuan was. She was truly like a goddess of death. When she looked at him, he couldn't see the slightest human emotion. All he saw was icy killing intent. Lang Yuan pointed her bone sword at the sky. A huge image of a sword appeared with endless runes within it. Following her actions, her sword suddenly blossomed with light, and that immense image was absorbed into her true sword. Netherworld Ghost Slash. Lang Yuan's sword mercilessly slashed down at Long Chun. A terrifying aura caused heaven and earth to tremble. Lang Yuan's sapphire eyes released endless killing intent. Her sword slashed down mercilessly while her terrifying aura caused the world to quiver in fear. Split the heavens. Long Chun also shouted, his spiritual yuan raging through 18 acupuncture points. Boom! It was like a collision of stars. A blinding light erupted and endless runes were blown apart. Long Chun was appalled. Lung Yuan was too terrifying. This attack had sent Long Chun flying, and he almost coughed up blood. Just at that moment, Lung Yuan practically teleported beside him and stabbed her sword at his chest at an extremely tricky angle. What? Long Chun was appalled. What kind of monster was Lung Yuan? How could she not have been affected by the shockwave of their attacks and could still unleash another attack? But then seeing Lung Yuan's movement art, he suddenly realized it was a bit familiar. The Netherworld Ghost Steps? Boom! Long Chun instinctively blocked with Flying Rainbow, just barely escaping that Bone Sword's fatal attack. You know the Netherworld Ghost Steps? This was Lung Yuan's first time showing any emotion. She was clearly shocked he could shout out her movement art's name. But that shock only lasted for the blink of an eye before she returned to her icy, apathetic self. She once more attacked Long Chun. This time, her movement art appeared even more demonic and ephemeral. When she first swung her sword, she was to Long Chen's left. But in the middle of the attack, her sword suddenly appeared to Long Chen's right. In the end, when the sword was about to strike him, it appeared behind him. Long Chun instinctively slashed his sword behind him without even looking. He perfectly blocked the bone sword. From that one exchange, Long Chun confirmed Lung Yuan was using the Netherworld Ghost Steps. But her Netherworld Ghost Steps was of a much higher level than the one he had learned. He was barely able to see some clues based on the way she moved and the change in her aura. If it hadn't been for his own experience with the Netherworld Ghost Steps, which allowed him to see through some of her movements, there would have been no way for him to block her practically ghost-like attack from the back. Fuck. That damn old ghost was definitely holding back and only taught me some superficial nonsense, cursed Long Chun. In truth, Long Chun had wrongly blamed Gue Sha. It wasn't that he hadn't wanted to teach him this higher-level technique, but that his own status wasn't high enough in the corrupt path to learn it. He had only had the qualifications to learn that level of Netherworld Ghost Steps. It had to be known that the Netherworld Ghost Steps was an extremely famous technique in the corrupt path. To be able to learn even the first superficial level of it was already an immense honor, and it was all thanks to that superficial level that Long Chun was able to see through Lung Yuan's ghost-like attack. Long Chun became covered in thunder force as he activated the lightning body blink. The two of them pushed their speed to their peaks as they underwent an intense battle. One was ghost-like and ephemeral, while one was like rushing lightning. Their two figures moved so quickly that it was impossible to track them with the naked eye. Sword chi filled the sky. It was practically impossible to see their figures anymore. It was a true competition of speed. Long Chun was growing more and more shocked. This Lung Yuan's power just kept coming. It was no wonder Shui Yu would be so afraid of her. Each one of her attacks was fierce and vicious, with no room for compromise. Furthermore, each one of her moves had clearly been tempered through hundreds and thousands of battles. Her battle experience was shockingly profound. They exchanged almost 1,000 blows. Because they were so fast, it only took an incense stick's worth of time. But within these 1,000 exchanges, Long Chun wasn't able to find the slightest mistake in any of her moves. That didn't mean that her moves were perfect, as there wasn't anything truly perfect in this world. It was just that all her moves linked up to the next, so any openings were made up for. Furthermore, with her rapid attacks and movement, even Long Chun was only barely able to see those openings. But he wasn't able to find any opportunity to counterattack. You're very powerful. Unfortunately, you're unable to release your power. Your movements are too clumsy. If you didn't have such shocking combat instincts, you'd have long since died to my sword. But even so, you have no chance of victory. In less than an hour, you'll die to my sword. Even if you have any powerful moves, you won't be able to use them. Lung Yuan suddenly opened her mouth, but her sword didn't slow down at all. Long Chun snorted and didn't reply. That was because there was nothing to say. Her words weren't the slightest bit wrong. He wasn't able to release any of his power against her. Although Flying Rainbow was a treasure item, it was too light, and it wasn't able to release his true power. His fight with Lang Yuyan was basically a competition of swords, and so he was naturally at an immense disadvantage. Right now, he was simply doing his best to endure. But he definitely couldn't continue like this for long. Lang Yuyan was a terrifying killer, and her combat experience wasn't any less than his own. To release a powerful move against such an expert, it would require an opportunity. That was an extremely large problem for Long Chen now. No matter how strong his techniques were, if he was unable to release them, they wouldn't have any effect. Long Chen had already activated his divine ring and brought himself to his peak state. But Lang Yuyan had also released her full power, and they seemed evenly matched. However, Long Chen knew that if they continued like this, his defeat was inevitable. Lang Yuyan's eyes were too monstrous. Although she wasn't necessarily able to see through everything about him, she had still sensed several of his habits and weaknesses. She had seen through the fact that he wasn't used to using a sword, and her plan was to use that to kill him with the smallest price. Suddenly, countless golden runes appeared around Long Chen. Lang Yuyan's first thought was that Long Chen was preparing to release some kind of powerful move, but when she clearly saw what those golden runes were, she was startled. Those were the hidden ground gold Spider King's scales. They formed a golden sea that surged toward Lang Yuyan. After being nourished within Long Chen's spiritual space for so long, these scales were no different from ordinary enchanted items to him. He could use them as he pleased. Even Lang Yuyan wasn't able to disregard this many enchanted weapons. Her body wasn't able to endure how sharp those scales were. Her sword danced within that sea of scales. Those incomparably sharp scales, which even enchanted items would find difficult to damage, were blown to bits whenever they touched Lang Yuyan's sword. Split the heavens! Long Chen had no choice but to unleash a full-strength attack. If this continued, all those scales would be destroyed by Lang Yuyan. Those were his best treasures for group battles. Boom! Lang Yuyan was enveloped by the scales and couldn't escape, so she could only take it head-on. As a result, she was sent flying. A good opportunity. Raging flame prison. Long Chen hastily formed hand seals. Space quivered as endless flame runes appeared around Lang Yuyan, trapping her. Her expression suddenly changed as she sensed danger. Her sapphire eyes suddenly shot out two rays of light that were like two blades piercing the void. Heaven Netherworld slash. Lang Yuyan's bone sword suddenly blossomed with light. A ray of sword chi slashed onto one of the flame chains of the raging flame prison. Boom! Long Chen was appalled to see that her attack actually managed to sever the flame chain. Before the flame prison could completely form, she charged out. Long Chen immediately understood what the Eastern Wasteland Bell had meant. Lang Yuyan's void-piercing eyes were too powerful. As the user of the raging flame prison, Long Chen naturally knew its weak point. The main one was that when the flame prison had yet to fully form, it was in its weakest state. When the prison was first formed, the core flame runes would condense pillars. Those pillars would then condense the flame chains, and those flame chains would be formed of countless smaller runes. Those runes were formed of heaven and earth's purest flame energy. Long Chen used his own flame energy to control them and keep them linked. In truth, each flame chain had a fatal weakness. That weakness was Long Chen's flame energy. When the flame prison first formed, he had to adhere his own flame energy on top of the runes in order to connect them into their prison form. Furthermore, his flame energy had to rapidly circulate throughout the entire prison, because that was the only way to keep the flame prison operating. His flame energy would be wrapped around by heaven and earth's flame energy, making it so others couldn't sense it. But the void-piercing eyes saw through it all. Not only did she see through it, but Lang Yuyan had also shattered his flame energy at its weakest point, shattering the chain and escaping. Long Chen groaned, coughing up blood. Having his flame prison be instantly destroyed as soon as it began to form, he suffered an extremely powerful backlash. It was fortunate that the earth flame was very strong. The reverse flow of the world's flame energy was brunt by it, allowing Long Chen to only suffer a slight injury. Fuck! How is she so difficult to deal with? Raged Long Chen as he looked up at the godlike Lang Yuyan. The lotus flower rune was shining on her forehead. Lang Yuan had just rushed out of the raging flame prison, and the sword in her hand pointed several times. Following that, it looked as if the void had been pierced. A scarlet liquid flowed out as if the void was bleeding. That scarlet liquid immediately transformed into blood-colored runes. When Lang Yuan pointed the third time, Long Chun suddenly felt a chill. An extremely bad feeling arose in his heart. She was also planning on releasing one of her ultimate moves. Double Dragon Destruction. Long Chun directly summoned Lei Long and Huolong. On the fifth time, Lang Yuan pointed with her sword. Half of a blood-colored figure appeared in the void. Heaven and earth transformed, seeming to become a hell on earth. Boom! But only half of that figure's body had appeared before the two dragons crashed into it. Blood-colored runes exploded and Lang Yuan quivered, a trace of blood flowing out of the corner of her mouth. She had finally been injured. Sorry. Don't blame me for being vicious to a woman. The runes filling the air exploded. Long Chen's figure appeared in front of Lang Yuan, his sword stabbing into her chest. The blood-colored runes in the air disappeared and the terrifying pressure vanished. The scene of a hell on earth also silently faded, and the world returned to calm. The ground had been shattered and ruined beyond belief. In the air, two figures were floating next to each other. Long Chen's sword was stabbed through Lang Yuan's chest. Blood dripped off from the tip of the sword, and each drop landed on the ground, becoming scarlet flowers. Previously, you were intentionally hiding your powerful explosive strength? Lang Yuan looked at that sword piercing her chest, and a flash of comprehension appeared in her eyes. She had been misled by Long Chen. When Long Chun had fought with her, she had suppressed him in terms of speed. She had felt that she had already seen through his attack style. But she was wrong. Long Chen hadn't held back while fighting previously. But the only thing that he hadn't revealed was the lightning body blink's greatest superiority: its explosive speed. In truth, in terms of level, the lightning body blink was probably a far cry from Lang Yuan's Netherworld Ghost Steps. If he hadn't already learned the Netherworld Ghost Steps foundation, there would have been no way for him to keep up with her for so long. There was only one aspect in which the lightning body blink could surpass the Netherworld Ghost Steps, and that was the instant eruption of speed. The Netherworld Ghost Steps required increasing the speed gradually, but the lightning body blink could do it instantaneously. The blink in the technique's name referred to instantly reaching the peak speed. Other people wouldn't have Long Chen's speed even if they cultivated the lightning body blink. That was because Long Chen's thunder force came from heavenly tribulation, so it was incomparably powerful. Previously, against Lang Yuan, he had been in danger several times, and he had been willing to suffer injury rather than reveal that explosive speed. It was to wait for an opportunity, and that opportunity had come. Opportunities were all created, and they were always left to those who prepared. This opportunity had been grasped by Long Chen. His sword had pierced Lang Yuan's chest. As long as he willed it, his spiritual yuan would erupt, and Lang Yuan would instantly become a fallen beauty. Her life and death were in his hands. You're very powerful. I had no choice but to use a scheme. Although I usually dislike using schemes to resolve problems, when martial might is unable to handle things, I can only rely on some smarts to make up for it, said Long Chun. Lang Yuan was too powerful, so powerful that it was terrifying. She was like a goddess of death with no weak points. In truth, using this move to kill her made Long Chun a bit ashamed. Lang Yuan's sapphire eyes looked into Long Chen's eyes. She seemed to have seen through his heart and actually smiled. You don't need to feel ashamed. You should be proud. This is my first time being injured since I was 5 years old. The corrupt path's geniuses that have fallen to my hands are enough to form a huge mountain. In all these years, you're the one who has had the greatest chance to kill me. Congratulations. Lang Yuan had always been so emotionless, but now suddenly seeing her smile, it was like the blooming of a flower. It was incredibly moving, and Long Chun hastily focused himself on his sword, so he wouldn't get distracted. The only thing he didn't understand was that even with her death at hand, Lang Yuan seemed extremely happy. It was like death was something worth celebrating for her. He could see the excitement in her eyes. That was clearly her inner emotion, so he was puzzled. Drip. Drip. Blood continued to drip from the sky. The sound was like the overture of death, causing the atmosphere to be strange. The feeling of being injured is excellent. I really like this feeling, and I like feeling so close to death even more. This feeling is so wonderful. But regretfully, in all these years, the number of people that could give me this feeling was pitifully low. Longchen, you're a real man. You arouse me. An extremely rare tender light appeared in Long Yuyan's eyes. Combined with her words, Long Chen's scalp immediately turned numb. Although he had experienced much in this world, he had never seen someone like this who actually wanted to die but couldn't run into any experts to kill them. That coward Shuiyu, he was never able to satisfy my desires. Long Chun, you're much stronger than him. Long Yuyan looked at him, smiling. Are you finished with your last words? If you are, then sorry, but we're all very busy. I don't have that much time to waste, said Long Chun coldly. Although Long Yuyan was a peak beauty, Long Chun had a profound understanding of just how terrifying this beauty was. He definitely wouldn't be soft-hearted to her and do something as melodramatic as to spare her life in hopes that she would give her heart to him. Just thinking of that would be idiotic. This kind of woman could not be subdued. Why don't you just let me experience this moving feeling for a bit longer? This feeling is too rare. Lang Yuyan shook her head, unwilling to have things end so quickly. Sorry. A slightly disturbed feeling arose within Long Chun. Personally killing a practically godlike beauty wasn't something that made him feel good. But in order to live longer, Long Chun still released the volcanic energy within his sword. But that immense power that could easily destroy mountains was locked down by a strange energy. It was unable to erupt. At the same time, a burst of pain came from his chest. Long Yuyan's bone sword had pierced his chest in the same place his sword was piercing hers. You've stabbed me, and I've also stabbed you. Now you can experience that moving feeling with me. Long Yuyan smiled excitedly. Long Chun immediately didn't dare to move. Long Yuyan's sword also contained a berserk energy. As long as she wished it, he would immediately be blown to pieces. Are you very curious? Seeing Long Chen's shock, Long Yuyan lightly rubbed his cheek, a trace of warmth in her sapphire eyes. You're the only man to injure me in the same realm, so I'll tell you a secret that only I know in this world. My bloodline comes from a supreme existence. My bloodline power is even greater than my combat power. You are unable to kill me. Long Chen, you're a true man. Thank you for giving me this delightful feeling. To thank you, I'll let you die painlessly. A terrifying aura began to erupt from Long Yuyan's sword as soon as she finished speaking. Long Chun roared, and he circulated the thunder force and the earth flames energy within his body. He forcibly sealed the energy on Long Yuyan's sword. He had learned from her. Long Yuyan's blood had actually released a powerful defense that had blocked his sword's energy from erupting. It was like ignited gunpowder that had been extinguished by ice water. Copying her, he used his thunder force and flame energy to tightly lock Long Yuyan's sword. That was all he could do now. Originally, when Long Yuyan's energy was about to erupt, the Eastern Wasteland Bell had been about to help. But seeing Long Chun suddenly come up with such a crazy thought, imitating his opponent's bloodline force, it stopped. Long Yuyan's energy was locked within her sword. As a result, Long Chun was pushed back by her sword, and blood trickled out of his mouth. Although he had imitated Long Yuyan's technique, he was unable to do it perfectly. A portion of that power had still leaked out and injured his insides. Long Yuyan was shocked. However, her sword continued pushing toward Long Chun, and the two of them still maintained their original posture, with both swords in their chests, as they flew through the air. Don't be afraid. Death is something instantaneous. You don't need to struggle, as that will just make you more afraid and pained. Long Yuyan shook her head. Long Chun didn't reply. He was completely focused on circulating his thunder force and flame energy, locking Long Yuyan's energy. He couldn't let it erupt within him or he would definitely be dead. He struggled with his life on the line. His head was rapidly working, trying to think of a way to escape his current crisis. But Leng Yueyan was too powerful. Now that she had grabbed hold of this opportunity to kill him, there was no chance she would let go. Just like that, Long Chun struggled with his life on the line, while Leng Yueyan also followed him. Suddenly, both their expressions changed. A terrifying pressure crashed down on them. Not good. Leng Yueyan's expression changed. At some unknown point, the two of them had flown over an abyss. The space around them was starting to twist. A terrifying battle had once occurred in the immemorial path. The ground had shattered, and some of the large cracks still contained the laws from the battle back then. Once those laws were touched, the only possibility was death. Leng Yueyan could no longer bother with killing Long Chun. The wings on her back shook and she flew back. Long Chun also regained his freedom, but he had a bad feeling. He was appalled to realize that this abyss was thousands of miles wide. It was the largest abyss he had seen, and the two of them were already dozens of miles into it. They were in an extremely dangerous position. The two of them were just about to leave this place when space twisted. A powerful suction force suddenly came from below. The darkness was like a huge mouth wanting to devour them. Both of them realized the space around them had frozen. They were unable to go up or even fly anymore. They could only fall. The two of them struggled as hard as they could, but that suction force was too strong. They could only watch as they fell. In just a moment they were miles below ground. Because they were unable to control their falling direction, the two of them ended up getting closer and closer. In the end, when they were practically right next to each other, Leng Yueyan's sword suddenly slashed at Long Chun. Fuck! You still want to kill at this time? Was your head kicked by a donkey? Cursed Long Chun. Even at this time, she didn't think about escaping. In his fury, he didn't bother overthinking it. Flying Rainbow also unleashed a torrent of attacks against Leng Yueyan. They began to fall even faster. The sky was just a line in their sight now. At this moment, a terrifying aura suddenly rose within the abyss. That aura surged like a furious tide, instantly enveloping the two of them. Long Chen's expression involuntarily changed. Long Chen felt goosebumps. Invisible blades were suddenly shooting up from below, attacking him and Leng Yueyan. Flying Rainbow released a barrier of light that protected him, while Leng Yueyan also stopped attacking. Her bone blade blocked those invisible attacks. Long Chen's hand trembled when those invisible blades struck his sword. He sensed countless invisible arrows of some sort of energy were going through Flying Rainbow's barrier when he broke the invisible blades. His body instantly became riddled with small holes. Even his powerful body didn't have the slightest ability to resist this unknown power. Careful. These are spatial blades, the result of when peak experts shattered the void. This place is a land of death created by experts that broke heaven and earth's laws. This is just a trace of the chaotic flow of space, but it's still not something people on your level can resist, said the Eastern Wasteland Belle. But Long Chun had no time to care about the spatial blades of the chaotic flow of space. Right now, he was surrounded by invisible attacks. He could only faintly sense them right before they struck him. He did his best to block them, but he was still pierced over and over. Leng Yueyan's bone sword released waves of light. Runes revolved around her. Her defense was even stronger than Long Chen's, but even she was unable to stop these invisible spatial blades. Blood was pouring out of her body. Although they were both capable of rapidly healing, this wasn't a solution. Furthermore, they were rapidly falling, and the attacks only grew stronger. They wouldn't be able to hold on much longer. Hey, monster girl. If this continues, we'll both die. It's better if we work together, said Long Chun. Although he had the primal chaos beads healing, that wouldn't work forever. As the spatial blades grew stronger, who knew whether or not one of them might instantly kill him? Furthermore, the two of them were enemies. He not only had to block the spatial blades, but he also had to be on guard against Leng Yueyan. That was the most dangerous thing, which made it so Long Chun couldn't focus completely. I, Leng Yueyan, disdain working together with others. Furthermore, in this world, other than myself, there's no one I can trust. Also, if you randomly come up with nicknames for me, I'll kill you right now. said Lang Yuan coldly. You moronic girl. Being so obstinate will only cause you to accompany me in death, snorted Long Chen. Both of them were in desperate straits. If they didn't work together to find a way out of this, they would both die. These abysses here were known as lands of death. Anyone who had fallen down had never been seen again. Having his proposal rejected infuriated him. Death isn't terrifying. If you treat death as the start of another life, you won't feel so afraid, said Lang Yuan indifferently. Long Chen almost died from rage. Why did it seem this woman wanted to die so badly? But he was different. He didn't want to die, he wanted to live. He had many things that he hadn't done yet. He had his brothers and beauties waiting for him. His parents were also waiting for him. He couldn't die yet. But Lang Yuan refused to cooperate. It was unknown whether it was her pride or if she distrusted him. He couldn't do anything about it. Long Chen pushed his stars to their peak. Endless runes poured out a flying rainbow as each slash released a river of runes that wrapped around him. But he still felt like the pressure was growing. It seemed like countless archers were shooting at him from every angle. Furthermore, the spatial blades were growing more powerful. Any of them could instantly kill a rank 2 celestial. Even ordinary rank 3 celestials would only be able to last for a breath. The two of them continued to fall for half an incense stick's worth of time. As a result, they weren't even able to see the sky anymore. The world had turned pitch black for them. It was unknown just how many miles they had fallen. The spatial blades were now incredibly terrifying. Long Chen almost had his head destroyed by one. Long Chen was covered in blood as he continuously suffered injuries. He had drawn out the life energy in the primal chaos space so many times now that the trees were already starting to show signs of withering. There was no way around it. His body was constantly receiving heavy injuries, and if he didn't immediately heal, the next spatial blade might directly shatter his body. Long Chen, how about we work together for a bit? Otherwise, we really will die. What Long Chen hadn't expected was for Lang Yuan to suddenly open her mouth. He raged, "Death isn't terrifying. If you treat death as the start of another life, you won't feel so afraid." But as soon as he said it, he regretted it. Just the slight satisfaction of returning her words to her had sealed his fate. That was clearly a bit childish. You can't even maintain a clear head. You're too emotional and impetuous. Long Chen. I take back my praise for you, snorted Lang Yuan. Long Chen took a deep breath. Now really wasn't the time to argue. Suppressing his emotions, he forced himself to be calm. Then let's work together. Before we escape our current predicament, we definitely can't attack each other. Are you capable of doing that? Asked Long Chen. I should be the one asking you that. Stabbing people in the back, hitting people when they're down, conning their own people, those are the things your righteous path is most proficient in. Don't you feel asking me this is very satirical? Lang Yuan's words almost caused Long Chen's rage to erupt out of control. But then thinking about it, her words were the truth. Although the corrupt path was fierce and savage, they actually cared a great deal about prestige and reputation. As for the righteous path, well, there was no need to say it so directly. Fine, I won't lower myself to your level. Since I've chosen to work together with you, I'll temporarily trust you, said Long Chen. After saying that, he clenched his teeth and slowly approached Lang Yuan. Thinking of how he had to work together with this terrifying woman, he felt a chill. But there really was no other choice right now. Once Long Chen was closer and had entered Lang Yuan's attack range, her sword suddenly released an even brighter light. She increased her defensive range to include him. In fact, her defensive perimeter instantly grew to 300 meters. Seeing that, Long Chen was shocked. Monstrous, absolutely monstrous. Just how strong was Lang Yuan? Even now, she was able to release such terrifying power. You don't need to be surprised. She is drawing out her bloodline energy. Just like you, she has spirit blood. But her spirit blood wasn't extracted. Instead, it's perfect, and furthermore, she seems to possess extremely strange origins. I'm actually unable to see through the origin of her spirit blood, said the Eastern Wasteland Belle. Spirit blood is actually so powerful? Of course. That so-called bloodline power refers to ancestral experts that pass down a portion of their own talent through bloodline runes. But spirit blood is different. It is a spiritual blessing passed down by supreme experts. Not only can it pass down talent and divine abilities, but it can even superimpose karmic luck. Spirit blood is a sacred inheritance. How else do you think this girl is so strong? Said the Eastern Wasteland Belle. Spirit blood, spirit blood. Damn it. Long Chin cursed inside. Previously, he hadn't cared too much about having his spirit blood extracted. But seeing how terrifying Lung Yuan was, his fury soared. If he still possessed his spirit blood, would he be suppressed by this woman? Hey! Did you only come here to take advantage? Lung Yuan's voice brought Long Chun back to reality. Only now did he react. Right now, he was relying entirely on Lung Yuan's defense. He hastily began to brandish his sword, defending against the surrounding spatial blades. His back was up against Lung Yuan's back. That way it would only take half the effort to defend themselves. The two of them relaxed slightly, but very quickly they were unable to stay relaxed. That was because they suddenly heard a terrifying rumbling coming from below. They hastily looked down. This place was completely black, but with their cultivation bases combined with their spiritual strength, they were able to see. They saw a huge chain at the bottom of the abyss. That chain was over 100 miles thick, and it was unknown just how long it was. It extended throughout the abyss. That unbelievably thick chain was surrounded by revolving runes. Endless spatial blades were flying out of it. The spatial blades they had run into had been invisible, but the spatial blades coming from the huge chain were easy to see. Those blades slashed through the void. Space was constantly being torn and then healed. That ear-piercing sound gave them chills. We still have an incense stick's worth of time before we reach the bottom. Once we touch those spatial blades, we won't even have corpses left, said Lung Yuan indifferently. Long Chun took a deep breath and said, even at such a time, you can still calmly and objectively appraise the situation. I really have to admire you. Respected Devil Empress, I need you to help protect me. I'll use a magical art to lock us in space. Otherwise, we'll quickly be cut into mincemeat. After saying that, Long Chin stopped defending. He rapidly formed hand seals. Countless flame runes surged around him, and Lung Yuan brandished her bone blade to protect him. Raging Flame Prison. A huge flame prison appeared, enveloping Long Chun and Lung Yuan. It immediately began to shrink to a size of 3 meters. No matter how the wind blades tried, they were unable to damage the flame prison. Long Chen thanked his lucky stars. If any of the spatial blades had touched the nodes of the flame prison when it had formed, then it would have shattered just like when Lung Yuan had broken it. But to break that node, which only appeared for an instant, was something only Lung Yuan could do with her void-piercing eyes. This technique of yours is very powerful, praised Lung Yuan upon seeing that the wind blades were unable to shake the flame prison. Long Chun sighed. Even if it's strong, it doesn't have any use. We still have a bit of time. Whether or not we can survive is up to you. I'm out of moves. Lung Yuan was startled. But once she spread her divine sense, her expression changed. Long Chen's raging flame prison was a kind of space-locking magical art. Once this magical art was used, then according to reason it couldn't move within space. But within this abyss, space was unstable. His raging flame prison was floating in its space without moving, but the surrounding space was sinking. That made the raging flame prison continue to sink. Although it was much slower, it still wouldn't be long before they fell within that chaotic space at the bottom. The spatial blades there were capable of tearing apart the void. His raging flame prison was definitely incapable of enduring that power. Don't look at me. I've got nothing left. Long Chun waved his hand when he saw Lung Yuan looking at him. He truly was at his wit's end. He had already used all his trump cards. And in order to use the raging flame prison, he was exhausting his spiritual yuan and spiritual strength. Just maintaining the current situation was extremely taxing on him. If Lung Yuan wasn't able to do anything, their only end would be death. Look, there's a cave opening there. If we can get there, we might have a chance, shouted Long Chun suddenly. The abyss had grown narrower as they reached the bottom, allowing him to see the sides of it. He now saw a cave on the wall. Looks like our lives aren't supposed to end yet. Lang Yuan smiled slightly, but there wasn't any excitement. It was as if she didn't particularly care either way. Hey, don't just keep smiling. Hurry and think of something. If we can only see it but can't get over there, it doesn't mean a damn cough, it doesn't have any use, said Long Chen. Lang Yuan ignored him. Taking a deep breath, light blossomed from her sapphire eyes. She formed hand seals, and she softly opened her lips. Nether God protection. Buzz. Long Chen felt the entire space shudder. Even the spatial blades attacking the raging flame prison stopped. The world seemed to have entered a deathly stillness. Lang Yuan was surrounded by 3 colored runes. However, Long Chen was surprised to see that they contained a dense blood qi. Those weren't her heavenly Tao runes, but her bloodline runes. Her blood qi was soaring and runes sparkled in her eyes. With her robes and hair dancing in the wind, she seemed like an icy killing god, indifferent and aloof. A huge figure appeared in the air. That figure was almost 1,000 meters tall. In the air, its aura caused the abyss to rumble. Long Chen felt his scalp turn numb. This is a manifestation of her spirit blood. She has used a grand divine ability to connect to her ancestor's soul. But this girl's cultivation base is too low, and she can only summon an embryonic form. So there's no way to see it clearly, said the Eastern Wasteland Bell. Long Chen had always thought that the Eastern Wasteland Bell should be able to help him resolve his current crisis. But he had his own stubbornness. Unless it was absolutely necessary, he wouldn't ask anyone to save him. But for some unknown reason, Long Chen would rather work together with Lang Yuan than ask the Eastern Wasteland Bell for help. Boom! That huge figure reached out a hand and caught the raging flame prison. He tried to pull it toward the cave. But after trying several times, Lang Yuan suddenly cursed. Fool! Release your flame prison. I can't hold on much longer. Only then did Long Chen react. He scattered the flame prison, and the huge hand closed, completely protecting him and Lang Yuan. It moved them toward the cave. However, that figure was too huge and its agility was limited. But the good thing was that it wasn't afraid of being struck by the spatial blades. The 2 of them were temporarily safe. However, Lang Yuan was growing paler and paler, and her body was quivering. She formed hand seals, urging that enormous figure to move them. Buzz. Suddenly, the abyss trembled. Long Chen looked down to see that the sea of chaotic space and spatial blades below them suddenly erupted like a volcano. It was unknown what had happened, but a fierce attack crashed toward them. The huge figure was enveloped by the sea of spatial blades, and it was instantly cut to pieces, vanishing. Lang Yuan coughed up blood. With her mind connected to that figure, she had received an injury. Not good. Her expression changed. These spatial blades were too terrifying. Now, the 2 of them were exposed. As soon as he lost that hand's protection, Long Chen circulated his thunder force and shot toward the cave like a bolt of lightning. He had noticed that when that sea of spatial blades had erupted, the space around them had changed as well. That spatial restriction seemed to have been affected by the eruption, and it had disappeared. As a result, he had directly flown over to the cave without hesitation. And his bet had paid off. There was no more spatial restriction that prevented him from flying. On the other hand, Lang Yuan had received a backlash, so her reactions were slower. She only summoned her wings after Long Chen had already arrived at the cave. She also shot over. But as soon as Long Chen had arrived at the cave mouth, a door had begun to descend over the entrance. Lang Yuan's expression sank. The door was closing too fast for her to get there in time. Suddenly, countless golden scales shot out, forming a huge golden whip that arrived in front of Lang Yuan. Icy killing intent surfaced in her eyes, but then that vanished after a shout. Grab on! Lang Yuan grabbed the end of the golden scale whip. Long Chen pulled, and Lang Yuan shot over to the entrance like a shooting star. She just barely managed to enter before the door shut behind her. Being pulled by Long Chen, Lung Yuan ended up crashing into him. The two of them shot back, crashing into the wall. Long Chun was embedded in the wall, while Lung Yuan was grabbing his waist. The two of them maintained this posture, unable to move. Long Chun felt like he was about to fall apart. The wall behind him was extremely hard, and he had almost coughed up blood. But at the very least, they had escaped their immediate danger. Finally being safe again after such a tense situation, he fainted. Lung Yuan wasn't any better off than Long Chun. That illusory image she had summoned had been destroyed by the spatial blades, which had given her a huge backlash. Her spirit blood had been exhausted, causing her to be pale. Just like that, she leaned against Long Chun and fell asleep. After an unknown amount of time, Long Chun woke up first. He saw Lung Yuan still holding his waist, leaning against him. Due to the inertia from how they had arrived, Long Chun's legs were wrapped around her waist, and her perfect face was resting on his abdomen. Her scarlet robes had been badly damaged now, revealing her snow-white skin to Long Chun. Her eyes were closed, while her lips were slightly pursed. Long Chun was embarrassed to see that Lung Yuan's posture was extremely awkward. Her large chest was pressing against his sensitive area. Long Chun even felt that area reacting to her heartbeat. Long Chun's expression suddenly changed and he closed his eyes, feigning sleep. Lung Yuan slowly opened her eyes. She left his body and sat in front of him. Only then did Long Chun pretend to wake up. He was just about to say something when he saw an expression of disbelief on Lung Yuan's face. Her eyes were locked onto one place. Long Chun immediately crossed his legs, blocking that blade-like stare. Ha ha ha! Lung Yuan laughed as if she had seen something hilarious. She didn't stop for a long time. What's so funny? Haven't you heard of morning wood? Raged Long Chun. His gaze made Lung Yuan laugh even harder. No matter how thick Long Chun's face was, he couldn't endure that laughter. He directly ignored her and circulated the primal chaos bead to heal. Ha ha! Long Chun, you really are a pervert. In this world, it seems you're the only person who can treat me as a woman. I'm happy you can still form such a desire, laughed Lung Yuan. Since I killed all my apprentice brothers and sisters in my group, no one has treated me like a woman ever again. Whenever people see me, they are terrified. All they can think about is how they can survive. In their eyes, I'm a fiend that will take their lives at any moment. So I really have to admire you, Long Chun. You're the first man to treat me like a woman. I don't know whether I should praise you for being a valiant hero or being outrageously lecherous. Whether it was praise or not, it seemed he really was unable to escape this label of being a pervert. Long Chun was speechless, but he was still on guard. He retreated a few steps, maintaining a certain distance from this death-godlike woman. In my eyes, you're only a woman. Long Chun shook his head. Oh, if I'm just a woman, then why do you have to be so on guard? Lung Yuan's smile disappeared upon seeing Long Chun retreat. Her face returned to its icy appearance. Do you want to hear the truth? Long Chun frowned. Of course. Long Chun looked at her for a long while before saying, I like beautiful women, especially the kind of peerless beautiful women that are very eye-attracting when they're in my embrace. That makes countless idiots clench their teeth and glare at me with hatred and envy. But you are too dangerous. To tell the truth, I'm afraid I can't subdue you, but then I also feel like killing you would be regretful. However, if I don't kill you, you might kill me at any time. I'm very conflicted, so I hope that once we leave here, we will never see each other again. That would make me the happiest. Lung Yuan was stunned for a moment, but looking into Long Chun's eyes, she seemed to be able to see through his inner heart. She suddenly laughed. Then how about you try seeing if you can subdue me? Then how about you try seeing if you can subdue me? With her sapphire eyes and jade-like face, along with her inherent proud and aloof temperament, these words possessed immense power. Even Long Chun almost couldn't resist. His heart pounded, but he suppressed those emotions. He bitterly smiled. Let's not. I already have quite a few beauties, and one of them doesn't have a very good temper. If you two met, it would definitely end in a battle to the death. I wouldn't dare to allow such a thing. Long Chun had thought of Tang Waner. Although she was kind-hearted, her temper wasn't small. Just having one such person in his family was enough. If there were two, then the heavens would explode. Most importantly, this Long Yuan killed people without blinking an eye. Although she was smiling and talking now, who knew when she would suddenly turn hostile and want to kill him? Now he knew just how terrifying spirit blood was. That mysterious figure she had summoned might have been destroyed by the spatial blades in the end, but its power had left a deep impression on him. His guess was that even if he had trapped Lang Yuan in the Raging Flame prison back then, he still wouldn't have been able to kill her. That terrifying figure would definitely have been able to break his Raging Flame prison. Perhaps you have the qualifications to become my man. But not right now. You just have immense potential. It's such a pity that we'll be enemies again once we leave this place. I'll still have to kill you, said Lang Yuan regretfully. If you want to kill me, then I'll only be able to kill you first. Although you're very powerful, I still have a 50% assurance in killing you. Although if it comes to that, I'll very likely die to your counterattack as well, said Long Chun calmly. His voice was calm, but it was also full of confidence and was extremely domineering. His words were undoubtable. Lang Yuan was startled. Looking at Long Chun, she suddenly smiled. Could be said that when Lang Yuan smiled, she was exceptionally beautiful. Being smiled at by her could infatuate a person. Then I really am interested. I hope to be able to encounter a man who can force me to the brink of death, said Lang Yuan expectantly. Do you have some illness? Long Chun was speechless. This woman was so beautiful. But could it be that all her talent had been used on her beauty and her brain had been forgotten? Lang Yuan didn't get angry. She said, You don't understand me. My life is too dull. There's only slaughter and more slaughter. I really want to experience what it feels like to be killed by someone, but no one has been able to satisfy me. In order to satisfy this desire of mine, I constantly chased after Shuiyu. Regretfully, that idiot is too useless. He doesn't even have the qualifications to injure me. He even vainly wanted to put himself on the same level of fame as me in order to suppress me. If he's still unable to make me feel any threat once, he advances to a rank 4 celestial and enters C expansion. I'll directly cut off his head. Long Chen's heart shook. He was unable to understand just what origin this woman had. She was actually so monstrous. She dared to kill Shuiyu? Was she not afraid of provoking a calamity? Seeming to know what he was thinking, she said, Our corrupt path is different from your righteous path. Experts don't mature through being raised, but through killing. To put it bluntly, it's the survival of the fittest. True experts won't die, and those who die aren't true experts. So death is the only way to test whether or not someone is a true expert. So you think you'll never die? Asked Long Chun. Yes, I firmly believe I won't die, especially not to someone in the same realm as me. That's not arrogance, but confidence born from the mountain of corpses I have killed, said Lang Yuan indifferently. Since you believe you won't die, why would you cooperate with me in order to live? In any case, you wouldn't die, so wouldn't it be better for you to survive on your own? Asked Long Chun. That's not what it means. Experts all possess immense karmic luck, and they won't die easily. Even in desperate straits with death right in front of them, there will still be a slight opportunity to survive. As long as they can grasp it, they'll be able to avert disaster. So in my opinion, once a person falls into desperate straits, it's just the heavens closing one door for you. But at the same time as the door closes, the heavens will open a window. They won't leave you with no path of survival, said Lang Yuan. Ha ha ha. Why are you laughing? Lang Yuan glared at him in displeasure. The laughter was clearly a taunt. That's just what you think. But not everyone can be as fortunate as you. Long Chun was a bit angry. It was no wonder those peak experts he tried to kill always managed to get away in the end. So it was caused by those bastards' karmic luck. Oh? For example, me. When I fall into desperate straits, the heavens won't open a window. Instead, they'll even send in a wild dog. Whenever Long Chun thought of his luck, he wanted to clench his teeth in fury. Ha ha ha. Lang Yuan laughed. It seems your luck must be greatly lacking. Wait, you bastard. You dare to curse me? Lang Yuan suddenly attacked. Her icy bone sword stabbed directly toward Long Chun. She struck so quickly that, by the time he reacted, her sword had almost reached his abdomen. Long Chun hastily shot back. His reactions were definitely very fast, but the tip of the sword had still left behind a cold cut along his thigh. Even his brothers felt that icy feeling. The cut wasn't deep. It had merely pierced the skin. However, Long Chun was so frightened that his soul almost fled. But luckily, his brothers were still fine. Otherwise, he would be doomed for the rest of his life. Who knew if the new ones would feel the same once his brothers were cut off? Are you sick? Long Chun roared furiously. Seeing him so furious, looking like an angry lion, Lang Yuan was startled. She snorted, "We were properly speaking. So why did you have to curse me?" "Who cursed you?" Long Chun suddenly saw the stone door behind Lang Yuan that was tightly shut. He suddenly realized that she had thought he was cursing her by saying that she was the dog the heavens had thrown in here. He almost coughed up blood. What kind of false accusation was this? If she thought of herself like that, what did it have to do with him? "Why don't you attack? My bloodline power has been weakened and my injuries are much worse than yours. If you attack, you'll have over an 80% chance of killing me. You're clearly so furious, so why endure?" asked Lang Yuan curiously. "What does it have to do with you?" raged Long Chun. After saying that, he walked away. He wanted to get further away from this temperamental, seemingly mentally ill woman. Only then could he feel safer. Although his injuries had recovered, he had used the Raging Flame prison for too long. Both his spiritual yuan and spiritual strength were exhausted. It wasn't something that could be recovered in a few days. You don't want to take advantage? Your righteous path really is hypocritical. If you don't kill your enemies, you'll be killed. I didn't think you were so stupid, sneered Lang Yuan. You know nothing, sneered Long Chun back. He had found that there was no need to be polite to this woman, nor was there any need to treat her like a woman. She could not be reasoned with. Humph. Have you run out of words? Otherwise, tell me just what there is to know, said Lang Yuan. She slowly began to walk closer to Long Chun. Get back. I'm afraid of dogs, shouted Long Chun. Courting death. Lang Yuan attacked. Long Chun had long since been prepared. Their swords danced, but after just a few exchanges, they stopped. The two of them were both exhausted. They sat on the ground, panting for breath. They didn't have enough power to fight so intensely. Your righteous path really is hypocritical, shameless and despicable, treacherous and murderous, saying honeyed words only to stab someone in the back. Lang Yuan still cursed him while panting. You are correct. Long Chun nodded. Lang Yuan was surprised, not expecting him to agree. He continued, not giving her a chance to say anything. However, our righteous path is not entirely filled with people like that. The cultivation world is like a vat of dye. Living within that vat, it's impossible not to be contaminated. Within the righteous path, the people you described take up the absolute majority. But there are still many people who are able to maintain their own beliefs and protect their hearts. But you? Isn't your corrupt path contaminated down to the core? All day, you're brainwashed to desire slaughter. Other than yourself, who else can you trust in this world? Who can you rely on? When you are lonely, who will accompany you? When you are happy, who will you share that happiness with? Don't bother telling me that experts don't need those things, as if just having power is enough. That's just garbage. Emotions are an innate part of humans. Your corrupt path deliberately tries to destroy those emotions. But do they succeed? Do you still remember what you felt when you first killed your companions? Did you not feel the slightest guilt, the slightest pain, the slightest unwillingness? Of course you did. But you suppressed those human emotions to the bottom of your heart and sealed them. However, don't you feel very lost? Why do you have to get stronger? Why do you have to kill others? Is it to prove how strong you are? If so, are you any different than tools for slaughter? That's enough, shouted Lang Yuan. She tightly gripped her bone sword, quivering. Long Chun also holding flying rainbow, ready to fight at any moment. He knew Lung Yuan was truly furious now. The corrupt path's expert's greatest taboo was others questioning their faith. For a full incense stick's worth of time, the two just looked at each other. Lung Yuan gradually suppressed her killing intent. She suddenly said, "I want to have a proper conversation with you." Long Chun sat cross-legged within the cave, but Flying Rainbow was lying right beside him. It was the only thing that made him feel a bit safer. Lung Yuan didn't reveal the slightest displeasure at Long Chen's guard. Just like that, she sat in front of him. She was looking at him, but her eyes were unfocused. She was clearly lost in her memories. The happiest time of my life was my childhood. Although I was an orphan, although I was hungry and cold, although I was bullied, I still feel like that time was so blessed. In our corrupt path, the orphans like me were gathered together. We didn't have anything to eat and had to rely on ourselves to forage in the mountains. Perhaps we might get some fruit or some small beasts. At that time, the 10 of us worked together, helping each other. Although we were hungry, we lived. We were the lucky ones. I personally saw other children starve to death or be eaten by wild beasts. Lung Yuan's story was an extremely tragic one. But when she talked about it, it seemed like those memories were so beautiful and warm. Long Chun didn't say anything. He just listened. Looking at her, it was his first time being able to smile sincerely in front of her. She continued, "Our beautiful life was put to an end eventually. We were brought away by adults and forced to cultivate. We were no longer hungry, but our nightmare began once our hunger and cold were gone. We were forced to consume all kinds of medicinal pills and to go through all kinds of experiments to test our bodies. We felt like we were just animals being fiddled with by butchers. No one dared to resist, nor did anyone have the power to resist. Then some of us were left behind while some were brought away. In our group, 3 people were brought away. When we went to search for them, we found out that they were no longer part of this world. People who can't cultivate in the corrupt path are just trash that wastes food. They don't need such existences." Hearing this, Long Chen sighed. The corrupt path's principles were simply like that. You only needed to become an expert, then any resources in this world would be yours. Whether you created those resources yourself or other people created them, they would all be yours. Another person's everything could be taken. That was an exceedingly fearful ideology. Under the long-time brainwashing of this ideology, they gradually became tools used for murder. All they thought about was to trample over other people's corpses in order to advance. The weak didn't even have the right to live. They only lived for the strong, to be the stepping stones of the strong. Having interacted with the corrupt path for so long, Long Chen now had a certain understanding of the corrupt path's beliefs. But it was his first time hearing a true corrupt disciple talking about their experience. He listened attentively. Lung Yuan pushed back some stray strands of hair. Her movements were gentle and slow, and her face was so tranquil that she seemed like a completely different person. Her appearance right now would make anyone feel pity for her. In the end, we were whittled down to 5 people. Not long after that, we were gathered with hundreds of other children to undergo the divine ceremony. The corrupt god's energy descended to bless us. I still remember how hallowed that ceremony was. Everyone was kneeling on the ground devoutly. Beads of light came falling from the sky, sprinkling over our bodies. Many people began to tremble with excitement, saying something about how they had seen the god's guidance and realized what direction they had to walk. In any case, I didn't feel anything at that time. Then we began going through all kinds of training. Back then, I didn't realize that it was cultivation. Eventually, we were forced to kill people from our group. Every 2 people were matched against each other. They had to kill their opponent in an incense stick's worth of time. Otherwise, they would both be killed. In the beginning, we thought it was a joke. But when we saw the first child send their opponent's head flying, when we saw that blood spurting through the air, we all realized jokes no longer existed in our lives. I still remember that day. I remember the crying, the terror, the heart-rending shrieks. I remember how afraid the person I killed was. He thirsted for life, but he was defeated. Strange. When I killed him, I was very calm. My sword stabbed through his heart, but my own heart was very calm. After that competition, over half of us were gone. Many people had failed to accomplish their mission, and so both children were killed. Back then I was a bit pained and angry. 3 months later, the competition was held again. It was even more vicious than the last time. In order to live, everyone could only go all out against their opponent. I still remember that the old fellow in charge of the trial was smiling very happily. I still remember his face. Later, when I became stronger, I made him smile and then cut off his head. I've always treasured it. Look! Long Yuan excitedly took out a human head. Her innocent appearance made it seem like she was a child showing off a cherished toy. Long Chen looked at that head. Although quite a few years had passed, although its blood had long since dried up, it was still preserved very well. The smile is a bit corpse-like. It's not natural enough. Long Chen gave a simple evaluation. Lung Yuan looked at the head and sighed. You're right, but I can't make things hard on him. I made him put on so many smiles. Only this smile was close to his natural smile, so that's when I slashed my sword. It's one of my memories, and it's very precious to me. That's why I've always kept it. I don't have that many memories of my life. She played around with the head as if it was an exquisite piece of craftsmanship. A pleased smile on her face. That made Long Chen's scalp turn numb. This girl was too monstrous. After playing around a bit, she put the head away and continued. Later, we had more competitions. There were less and less of us. In the end, we were down to 2 people. One was me, while the other was actually my big sister. We grew up together, but in the end, we raised our blades against each other. She was extremely talented and extremely strong. But rules are rules. Only one person could live. But neither of us were able to bring ourselves to kill the other. I decided to give the chance to live to her, and I moved myself to die to her sword. But she really understood me too well. Before I could have my way, I found my own sword was stabbing her heart. A crystalline tear fell from Long Yuan's sapphire eyes. But her voice was still exceptionally calm. She died. I lived. Before dying, she told me she was very happy to do this. But she was also very selfish. She hoped I could live happily. As a result, I lost the most important thing in my life. I had nothing left. I felt hatred, but I didn't know who to hate. The master of my sect ended up taking a liking to me, and I ended up becoming the apprentice of the Blood Fiend Gates master. In the end, I cut off his head. Not just him, but anyone who had watched us slaughter ourselves had their heads chopped off. But I didn't feel the slightest delight after cutting off their heads. Instead, I felt lost. The hatred within me didn't lessen at all. Later, I buried my hatred and focused on cultivating. I went all out to get stronger. During those years, I killed 3 of my masters. Long Chen was startled. Why? Because when they accepted me as an apprentice, I said that once I surpassed them, I would kill them. It's not so easy to be my master. There's a price. Now Long Chen felt goosebumps. What kind of reasoning was this? He asked. Even with that kind of condition, they still wanted to take you as an apprentice? Of course. Taking me as an apprentice was their lives' greatest glory. Even dying is worth it. Furthermore, only experts have the qualifications to make me their apprentice, said Long Yuan calmly. She suddenly looked at Long Chen. Do you want to try it? No, no, no. I really can't accept your good intentions. Long Chen hastily waved his hand and shook his head like a rattle. Did she think he had the same illness as her? But then when he thought about it, what if he did take Long Yuan as his apprentice? A scene appeared in Long Chen's mind. Long Yuan cutely kneeling in front of him, devoutly calling him master, massaging his feet. But the scene quickly changed. A bone sword suddenly slashed across his neck. His head flew into the air. Long Chen shivered and hastily tossed aside those thoughts away. That was purely playing with his life. No matter how many lives he had, it wouldn't be enough. In truth, Long Chen, you should consider pursuing me so you can become my man. Long Yuan suddenly smiled. That kind of smile was something no man could resist. Don't bother trying to seduce me. I have plenty of wives, and none of them are lacking compared to you. In fact, They're even more beautiful, gentler, and furthermore reaching here. Long Chen's expression suddenly changed and he tightly shut his mouth. Furthermore what? Asked Lang Yuan. Cough. Furthermore, it's not suitable for us to have a relationship, said Long Chen awkwardly. You're lying. Lang Yuan's sapphire eyes flashed. Long Chen's heart shook. Those void-piercing eyes were also able to tell when he was lying? Tell me the truth. Don't be such a girl, said Lang Yuan coldly. Long Chen knew he couldn't dodge this. He clenched his teeth and said, Furthermore, who could treat someone like you as a woman? After saying that, he clenched Flying Rainbow, preparing to fight against her at any moment. But Lang Yuan just calmly stared at him. Her mouth curled into a smile. I've decided. Somewhat nervous, Long Chen asked, Decided what? To kill you. Long Chen raged. When I tell you a lie, you refuse to accept it. When I tell you the truth, you want to kill me. Do you have an illness? Did you not take your medicine this morning? Lang Yuan's smile grew as she watched Long Chen rage. She gently said, Don't be angry. That's easy for you to say. Long Chen no longer bothered with any courtesy. She wanted to kill him but didn't want him to get angry? Was that possible? He really wondered how the corrupt experts' brains worked. Just wait for me to finish speaking. I also have my own secret sorrows, said Lang Yuan. Secret sorrows? Long Chen almost coughed up blood. He was the one she wanted to kill, but she was the one had the secret sorrows? I attacked you previously because you are the #1 expert from the Eastern Wasteland's righteous path. You also have limitless potential, enough to get you ranked first on the must-kill list. I just wanted to test if you lived up to your fame. However, to tell the truth, although you are very strong, compared to some of the others on the must-kill list, you are still a bit weaker. But now I understand that it's because the corrupt path isn't afraid of the current you, but the future you. Your potential truly is frightening. As for now, the reason I'll kill you isn't because of the corrupt path, nor is it to seek fame. I don't need those things. I have my own reason to kill you, said Lang Yuan righteously. I look displeasing? Long Chen was speechless. No, I find you very pleasing. Ever since I lost my big sister, I've never talked so much to anyone. You're very special. Although you're my enemy, I feel a kind of trust one can't describe from you. In the abyss, you entered the cave first. When the door started to close, I really thought you had tricked me, said Lang Yuan. So you decided to kill me at that time? Long Chen smiled slightly. You knew. Seeing that Long Chen merely smiled, Lang Yuan continued, Yes, I really did want to kill you at that time. But if I used a forbidden art at that time, I also wouldn't have survived. Fortunately, you didn't disappoint me. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to talk now. Long Chen bitterly shook his head. It's still too early to say if it was fortunate for me. Lang Yuan's eyes flashed. That beauty was intoxicating. She said, During these years, I've always relied on one goal to live. My goal is to kill people. I repeatedly made myself enemies. Once my enemies were all killed, I was powerless and could only accept a master and then kill my master. But each of my targets was too close to me. Before long, they all disappeared. Then I had to go looking for new targets. Before entering this place, I killed my foundation forging master. I've gotten a bit tired of this unchanging life. So I want to find a new target. And I found that you're the most suitable choice. As long as you are strong enough and have limitless potential, I can try killing you for a long time. Then I won't have to keep finding new targets. What the fuck? Are you crazy? What kind of dog's hit logic is that? Long Chen was unable to comprehend this kind of bizarre thinking. Only someone crazy could think like this. If you want a target to kill, why not choose that corrupt god of yours? Isn't that target much further? Lang Yuan disdainfully said, The corrupt god? He doesn't have the qualifications to be my opponent. I rather like you. If it weren't for her previous words, that last line of hers could make a man ecstatic. But now the meaning behind it was too profound. Long Chen really was unable to accept it. The thing that startled Long Chun the most was the fact that Lang Yuyen looked down on the corrupt god that all the corrupt disciples worshipped. What was going on? As expected, the Eastern Wasteland bells rang out in Long Chen's mind. "Senior, you know her origins?" asked Long Chun hastily. "Don't ask too much. Her origins are too frightening. If you can win her over, I guarantee you'll get limitless benefits," said the Eastern Wasteland bell. "Have you gotten things mixed up? She wants to kill me. How am I supposed to win her over? Am I supposed to just let her kill me?" Long Chun roared at the Eastern Wasteland bell within his mind. See, was it joking? That's your own problem. In any case, I've said all I have to say. How to act is up to you, said the Eastern Wasteland bell indifferently. Then it didn't make another sound. Lang Yuan smiled at the bewildered Long Chun. "Don't be afraid. I won't immediately kill you. I'll give you time to grow." Long Chun looked at Lang Yuan and suddenly smiled as bright as the sun. He gently held her hand and emotionally said, "Yuan, do you know? In truth, I very much like you. I don't want to kill you." Lang Yuan smiled. "I also like you. Otherwise, I wouldn't want to kill you." Long Chen's smile immediately became rigid. But he was an expert, and it was only rigid for a moment before becoming natural again. "Then what do I have to do so that you don't like me? Once I kill you, I won't like you anymore." "Fuck, you're just messing around with me?" raged Long Chun, throwing aside Lang Yuan's hand. "Long Chun, you'll never be able to understand my inner thoughts. You are the only man I've acknowledged in this world. That's why I will kill you," said Lang Yuan solemnly. "I can't be bothered to argue anymore with you. I'm going to heal. If you want to kill me, then just launch a sneak attack." Long Chun was finally sure that this fairy-like beauty was either an idiot or a lunatic. It was pointless to talk reason with her. But this crazy woman was incredibly powerful. That made Long Chun so furious that he felt like he was also about to become crazy. This was his first time feeling so powerless toward a woman. He couldn't beat her, nor could he kill her. Thus, he just directly resigned himself to his fate. He began to recover his spiritual yuan and spiritual strength. He had only just sat down when Lang Yuan moved beside him. She leaned lazily against him, her fragrance bursting into his nose. What are you doing?" asked Long Chun. "Just leaning for a bit. Go ahead and recover." "Don't worry, I won't attack you," said Lang Yuan indifferently, her eyes closed. "You don't need to recover?" probed Long Chun. With such a beautiful woman leaning against him, how was he supposed to enter a meditative state? "No need. As long as my bloodline power recovers, everything else will follow. I just need to sleep a bit," said Lang Yuan. Monstrous, absolutely monstrous. So spirit blood was actually so miraculous. Long Chin cursed inside. He had also been that monstrous before. He was once more becoming indignant. But being leaned on like this, especially with quite a few parts of Lang Yuan's skin being revealed, Long Chun couldn't bear it. After all, he was a man. Long Chun had only just opened his mouth when Lang Yuan's bone sword appeared in front of his neck. That chilling aura made his hair stand on end. "Feel that doing this is wronging you. I'm afraid you won't be comfortable." He hastily changed his tone. "I'll kill you if you continue spouting nonsense." Lang Yuan gave him an icy reply before becoming silent. Long Chun felt a burst of powerlessness. Men required power or they wouldn't even have the right to speak. Perhaps he would just have to find some happiness in having a peerless beauty lean against him. It was just that this peerless beauty was a bit too vicious. But at the same time, he felt a powerful desire to subdue this arrogant and aloof beauty. He shook his head. He had once more begun thinking crazy thoughts. He hastily expelled those thoughts and entered his meditative states, forgetting about himself and the rest of the world. He rapidly began to recover his exhausted spiritual yuan and spiritual strength. Lang Yuan leaned against his body, a peaceful expression on her face. That murderous and domineering version of her had disappeared. It was like she had become an innocent woman. Leaning against him made her think of when she had cuddled with her big sister in her youth. Although it was a different person, she still felt that this feeling of trust was very warm and very safe. At some unknown point, tears streamed out of her closed eyes. They dripped onto Long Chen's clothes, but he didn't notice them in his meditative state. Long Yuan wrapped an arm around Long Chen's waist. Just like that, she fell asleep, a faint smile on her lips. It was like she had returned to that warm embrace of her childhood. But there was still a single tear that rested in the corner of her mouth, sparkling like crystal. A full week passed. Only after 7 days did Long Chen slowly open his eyes. At this time, he had recovered to around 80%. He saw Long Yuan standing in the distance. She was staring blankly at some murals on the wall. Seeing her, he was shocked to find that she had completely recovered. Her aura was back to its peak. "You're finally awake. You really recover slowly." Long Yuan slowly turned around. Now that she had recovered to her peak, it seemed she had returned to her previous icy and arrogant self. The feeling of having a goddess of death standing beside him made him feel a chill. "Comparing myself to you really shakes my confidence." Long Chen bitterly smiled. He had done his best but had only recovered to 80%. On the other hand, his opponent had recovered to her peak after some sleep. This was practically bullying. Long Yuan smiled indifferently. "All right, since you've recovered to about 80%, let's go." "How are we supposed to go?" Long Chen was startled. "This place is a trial cave. I went on ahead and saw a transportation formation. It should be the way to leave once disciples completed the trial. I tested it and found that it seems functional." "Let's go," said Long Yuan. Long Chen walked deeper into the cave with her. Long Yuan suddenly reached out and grabbed Long Chen's hand. "Don't say anything. Let's just quietly walk the rest of the way. Once we leave, we'll be enemies again. Let's cherish these final moments," said Long Yuan. The sky was sunny with not a cloud in sight. But standing at the peak of a mountain, looking at the mountain range around him, Long Chen was unable to calm his heart for a long time. Long Yuan had left, but the words she had left behind made his heart heavy. "I'll give you time to grow, but the next time we meet, it'll be a battle to the death. I won't show mercy, and you should do the same." Although he had communicated with her a great deal before parting, he had found that the weakened Lang Yuan was like a completely different person from Lang Yuan in her peak state. He was unable to comprehend what she was thinking. Why did she have to kill him, and why was she so attached to the idea? She liked him, so she would kill him? That logic made no sense to him. She had clearly been completely serious when speaking. He didn't question her resolve to kill him at all. That was the most stifling thing. Were the corrupt path's emotions also so strange? This lessened the happiness he felt from escaping that hell-like abyss quite a bit. Furthermore, he found that these experts truly were supported by immense karmic luck. According to his experience, if he had been alone in such a situation, well then, the best thing to do was to directly get digging. And if he could smoothly dig all the way to the surface, he would have to bless his luck. It was unknown what kinds of things he might encounter on the way. But with Lang Yuan, everything happened so easily, safely, quickly, and painlessly, that allowed him to experience the beauty of karmic luck. His mood was heavy. Before leaving, Lang Yuan had also told him to be careful of Xueyu. Once Xueyu reached C expansion, he would advance to become a rank 4 celestial. At that time, his devil eye would truly awaken, allowing his combat power to reach an unimaginable level. The reason she hadn't killed Xueyu yet was precisely because she had been waiting for his devil eye to awaken. Then she would have a real battle with him. Furthermore, she was also close to breaking through. Once she advanced to C expansion, she would also become a rank 4 celestial. That made Long Chen feel a great deal of pressure. The rank 3 celestial Lang Yuan was already so terrifying. Once she awakened as a rank 4 celestial and advanced to C expansion, would he even be able to block a single blow of hers? Now he finally felt a sensation of mortal crisis. The immemorial path had now gathered the apex experts of the Eastern Wasteland's righteous and corrupt paths. Not only did he not possess the power to fight across realms against them, but even his advantage in the same realm was lessening. Having exchanged blows with Lang Yuan, Huang Junmo, and Xueyu, He knew they were incredibly powerful, especially Lang Yuyan. Even if he went all out, he didn't know if he would win. Right now, they were all at the barrier of sea expansion and could advance whenever. At that time, he would become a rat that could only hide. However, when the immemorial path opened, there would be an eruption of spiritual chi half a year in. At that time, the spiritual chi would be condensed to the peak, and it contained the most primal energy of the world. It was able to allow cultivators to perfectly advance to sea expansion. That was why Lang Yuyan and the others refused to advance to sea expansion yet despite having reached the barrier. They were all waiting for that opportunity. Calculating the time, it had already been over 2 months since the immemorial path had opened. He still had 3 months to advance. He had to properly use this time to increase his cultivation base and advance to sea expansion at that time, as that was the only way he would have the power to fight against them. He looked around and compared his location to his map. When he saw where he was, he realized he had deviated very far from the main path. The transportation node must have deviated when the immemorial path was destroyed. Long Chun calmed his emotions. Picking a direction, he began to walk back to the main path. For some unknown reason, he still felt a bit uncomfortable. It was like there was a stone on his heart. He was unable to understand Lang Yuyan. He could sense that she had a good opinion of him, but he could also sense her determination to kill him. She wasn't joking. He could only regard this kind of situation as the result of the corrupt path's environment and brainwashing. It had led to her heart being twisted and she could no longer be an ordinary person. You don't need to bother with this. She didn't kill you now because she really does like you, said the Eastern Wasteland Belle. Fuck off. I'm not able to understand this kind of ridiculous logic, said Long Chun irritably. The Eastern Wasteland Belle definitely knew something, but it refused to say no matter how he asked. She's a very pitiful person. You're her only hope. If you aren't killed by her, she'll still be able to live with that shred of hope. But if you die, her hopes will be extinguished. So you have to live. As long as you live, she can live. If you die, she'll become a walking corpse, sighed the Eastern Wasteland Belle. If you want to say something, then say it all. Otherwise, don't speak. Are you bullying me for being uneducated with your riddles? Replied Long Chun coldly. His words were always so mysterious. He just became more and more confused as he listened. There are many things that involve matters too big for you to learn. This kind of karma isn't something so easy to bear. I can only tell you this much. It would be best if you remembered my words. You'll realize what I'm saying bit by bit as you grow stronger. I owe you an immense favor, but I won't help you unless you are caught in a situation where you'll definitely die. Furthermore, I will only help you enough to pay back the debt I owe you. Once I do, the karma between us will be over, and I can no longer help you, said the Eastern Wasteland Belle. Fine, up to you. I'm used to relying on myself. I won't depend on your power, said Long Chun. Oh, there's movement up ahead. Suddenly, Long Chun noticed intense fluctuations. That should be the result of experts fighting. As he rushed over, he saw dozens of corrupt experts encircling 7 men and women that wore strange clothes. Aboriginals. Long Chun was surprised. There was clearly a halo of light over these aboriginals. Those were the fluctuations of the heavenly Daos and their curse. Although they had a few sea expansion experts, the corrupt experts were also formidable. They actually had a rank 3 celestial on their side. The 7 aboriginals were on the verge of collapse, but they still bitterly endured. Long Chun quickly saw through some clues to see that the corrupt experts were planning on capturing them alive. At the same time, he saw a crude formation not far from them. He suddenly realized these corrupt experts had definitely set up a trap. They had set up a transportation formation close by, and it was unknown what method they had used to draw out a group of aboriginals. If they were trying to capture them alive, their goal was clearly to exchange them for Yuan spirit stones. Just as the 7 of them were filled with despair, a golden light erupted. Countless scales flew over. The corrupt experts hadn't even realized what was happening before they were turned into pulp, their blood splashing through the air. The only one who survived was the rank 3 celestial. As soon as the golden scales had appeared, he had sensed a bad feeling and taken out a huge bone shield. It was unknown what that bone was from, but it managed to block the scales. Suddenly, a hand lightly pushed aside the shield, and the rank 3 Celestial saw a friendly face smiling at him. At the same time, he felt like a ray of light was flying at him. He instinctively dodged, but he suddenly found that his retreating speed had increased a great deal. The surrounding scene around him was rapidly pulling back. However, he felt that something was off. He was flying back, but there was a familiar, headless corpse where he had been. Beside that corpse were 7 dumbfounded aboriginals looking at him with shock. Soon after, they got smaller and then they disappeared in the end. Those 7 aboriginals were dumbfounded. They still hadn't understood what was happening before all those corrupt experts were killed. A figure wrapped in lightning rushed away, disappearing in the blink of an eye, but they still saw a head in his hand before he left. The aboriginals just stared for several moments before reacted and hastily fled. But one person suddenly came back midway and picked up those people's weapons and spatial rings. Only after gathering all those did he truly flee. The rank 3 Celestial was still flabbergasted. He finally realized that his head was being carried by someone, and he roared, "Release me!" He suddenly felt the world spinning around him as his head crashed into a mountain and began to roll. Soul search. Long Chun pointed his finger, wanting to peer through his memories. But he had only just begun when he rapidly retreated. Bang! His spiritual strength had only just entered when that person's head instantly exploded, and even his soul dissipated. He was truly dead. A spiritual seal. What a vicious method. Long Chun spat on the ground. It really was like what Lang Yuan had said. The corrupt path's disciples were raised to become tools for slaughter. Each one of them was like a game piece. Once those game pieces fell into enemy hands, they would be eliminated. Long Chun sighed with regret. If it had been Meng Qi, perhaps she could have broken the seal. But he was unable to. Hee, not bad. You really know how to work, praised the Eastern Wasteland Bell. Obviously, it had absorbed quite a bit of soul energy after he had killed that fellow. Long Chun bitterly smiled. After being so stifled, I can finally blow off some steam. At least not everyone is as monstrous as Lang Yuan. He had killed those people as easily as pulling weeds, releasing a bit of his pent-up gloom. Furthermore, he found that with his power, as long as he didn't run into Lang Yuan, he could pull weeds extremely easily. But then he looked down on himself for thinking that. Now wasn't the time to be thinking such useless thoughts. He had to quickly increase his cultivation base. The 10,000 beast forest is ahead? Haha, good. I can replenish some energy. Long Chun looked at the map and laughed. He continued onwards to a huge block. Flying rainbow flashed. A large python was killed with a single slash of Long Chen's sword and then tossed into the primal chaos space's black soil. Although it was just a 6th rank magical beast, it still offered a large amount of life energy for the withered trees once it was devoured by the black soil. Those trees had been vital to Long Chun in the abyss. They had healed his injuries countless times, which had exhausted all their life energy. They were finally showing signs of life again, but this little bit was like a cup of water on a burning cart. The block he was on could be counted as one of the largest ones in the immemorial path. This was a huge forest millions of miles wide. It was the most complete piece of land preserved on the immemorial path. There were soaring mountains and crisscrossing valleys. There were springs and brooks, but Long Chun had no idea where this water was coming from. However, this place was definitely the place with the most abundant life energy on the immemorial path. He had come here to hunt magical beasts, using their corpses to recover the forest in his primal chaos space. Of course, he not only wanted them to recover, he also wanted them to grow to their peak. Even now, these trees were still in a growing phase. They weren't even a mile tall yet. It had to be known that the same trees in the spirit world had been over 2 miles tall. He didn't have heavenly Tao runes, so these trees were the greatest protection to his life. On his path, Long Chun killed several 6th rank magical beasts before finally encountering a 7th rank magical beast. It was a huge crocodile that lived in a swamp. Its body was over 3,000 meters long, but it wasn't an ancient species, so it wasn't particularly strong. It was killed with a single sneak attack from Long Chun. Currently, the Enlightenment Palace star had reached the 8th star transformation. And thanks to his insane consumption of medicinal pills, his cultivation base had just reached the 11th heaven stage yesterday. After the 9th heaven stage, each increase allowed his power to explosively multiply. He might have been suppressed by Lung Yuan before, but now he had regained his confidence. Killing an ordinary 7th rank magical beast was now as easy as raising a hand to him. He killed 3 more of them very quickly. A 7th rank magical beast's body was huge. The last one had been a tiger magical beast, and Long Chun had intentionally heavily injured it before summoning Little Snow to kill it in one shot. Although Little Snow was only at the 6th rank, his combat power could threaten 7th rank magical beasts. After killing a 7th rank magical beast, Little Snow's mood clearly improved a little. Long Chun decided to keep him out the entire time and try to once more find that feeling of fighting shoulder to shoulder. Long Chun had Little Snow rove around as he pleased. As a magical beast, he was able to sense magical beasts that were stronger than him. Many magical beasts would leave behind their scent around their territory to warn invaders. When they encountered 6th rank magical beasts, Little Snow could handle them on his own. Although it was a bit difficult for him, especially when he encountered those with powerful ancient bloodlines, he was still fearless and crazily attacked. Once he killed his opponent, he would let out a roar. Looking at Little Snow, Long Chun was a bit worried. Little Snow was clearly like him, someone who enjoyed a battle. Although he was very obedient, he had his own pride. He didn't like being protected, and Long Chun could feel the changes in his mood. Little Snow was currently growing lonelier. That was related to how his cultivation base was being far surpassed. Those days of fighting alongside him were growing more and more distant. Although the Eastern Wasteland Bell had said that it could help Little Snow advance, that required time and a great deal of it. Who knew what level Long Chun would have reached by that time? If he had advanced to a much higher realm, then Little Snow still wouldn't be able to fight alongside him. But Long Chun kept these problems to himself. At the very least, Little Snow was happy now. He would just let him continue being happy. As the two of them advanced, they killed their 9th 7th rank magical beast on the 3rd day. The trees in the primal chaos space were once more flourishing. In fact, they continued to grow, reaching a mile in height. During these 3 days, Long Chun had intentionally lowered his combat power. When encountering 7th rank magical beasts, he would always cooperate with Little Snow to kill them. Sometimes he would intentionally act as if he was in danger so that Little Snow could help. As expected, after these 3 days, Little Snow was much happier, which comforted Long Chun. As long as Little Snow was happy, then even if he had to slow down a bit, he was willing. Long Chun always felt like he owed Little Snow too much. Little Snow had given his everything, including his life, for him. But Long Chun had given him far too little. Through 3 days of travel, he had already broached the outer layer of the forest. Although he hadn't reached the core, he was already starting to feel a sensation of danger. The map that the Shao tribe had given him showed that this region had extremely powerful magical beasts. The magical beasts that weren't strong enough were forced to live on the outer section of the forest. Once a magical beast reached the 6th rank, it would be like a human, and it would no longer need to hunt. It could absorb energy from heaven and earth to survive. But once they went through something that exhausted them and needed to rapidly recharge, they would go hunt other magical beasts. With Flying Rainbow on his back, Long Chun and Little Snow carefully advanced. Suddenly, Little Snow stopped moving and let out a growl. Long Chun's guard immediately raised. Little Snow had smelled a powerful magical beast scent. Continuing forward, they eventually reached a large mountain stream. A waterfall poured down from above, rumbling. Under the sunlight, a beautiful rainbow shone in the mist. Beside the waterfall was a huge figure. From a distance, it looked like a huge boulder or perhaps a small mountain. Damn, it's actually a mountain rock python. But its lines are actually golden. What breed is it? Long Chun recognized it to be a mountain rock python, but he didn't recognize its decorative patterns. It was either mutated or some existence he didn't know. Perhaps it was the mountain rock python's ancestor. Feeling its powerful aura from a distance, it was probably no weaker than the red-eye sacred blood phoenix or the hidden ground gold spider king. Now it was a bit troublesome. It had to be known that the hidden ground gold spider king had forced Shui Yu to use the self-harming Yama king blood curse. If it hadn't been for its immense power, he naturally wouldn't have made such a sacrifice. 7th rank was just a level. Not all magical beasts at the same rank were equal. Using human cultivators as an analogy, ordinary sea expansion experts could not compare to sea expansion celestials. Furthermore, rank 1 celestials were dregs in front of rank 3 celestials. Magical beasts were the same. An ordinary 7th rank magical beast was a far cry from a magical beast at the same rank but with an ancient bloodline. And when it came to magical beasts with ancient bloodlines, another important factor was the purity of their bloodline. That also created an immense difference in their combat power. As for this mountain rock python, its aura was definitely on the same level as the red-eye sacred blood phoenix. Looking closely, its aura was perhaps just the slightest bit weaker. Wait, isn't that the 7-stamen sea heart fruit? Long Chen's heart suddenly began to pound fervently. Not far from the mountain rock python was a foot-tall little tree. On that tree were bean-sized fruits. They seemed to have flowers blooming on them, but in truth, those were just flower designs. Each fruit sparkled like a gemstone. With those flowery designs on them, they looked like natural works of art. But in Long Chen's eyes, those weren't works of art, but treasures that had come at just the right time. He had long since entrusted Zheng Wenlong with the task of finding one, but there hadn't been any harvest after all this time. Even within the pill tower, he hadn't seen the 7-stamen sea heart fruit. That was a 7th-tier medicinal ingredient, and amongst them it was exceedingly precious. Could be considered a treasure amongst treasures. It was the core ingredient in refining the sea-merging pill. That was a medicinal pill that sea expansion experts longed for even in their dreams. The medicinal pill would have the 7-stamen sea heart fruit's flower images on it. Those were actually natural Dao marks that could absorb spiritual qi from the air. Because its medicinal effect was too strong, cultivators below sea expansion couldn't consume it. They were unable to endure the impact, and their dantians would explode. But Long Chen was different. He didn't have a dantian, so he could ignore the impact. All he needed was that terrifying spiritual qi to increase his cultivation base. As for his meridians, they were definitely strong enough to bear it. Although consuming medicinal pills that were tiered above your cultivation base was taboo, Long Chen's body was practically made to consume medicinal pills. There was no one else clearer on the effects of medicinal pills, and he was confident in being able to handle it. Once he obtained this fruit, he could refine sea-merging pills to rapidly increase his cultivation base. Then he wouldn't be thrown behind. Furthermore, he was confident that once he reached the 12th heaven stage, he would be able to win even against Lang Yuyan. However, he quickly began to feel awkward. The 7-stamen sea heart fruit was too close to the mountain rock python. They were less than 300 meters apart. Thus, to sneak over and obtain it wasn't possible. Just hiding his aura was useless. Many magical beasts didn't rely on aura to distinguish enemies. They relied on spatial fluctuations, smell, and even a sixth sense. Magical beasts possessed an innately high vigilance that made them extremely sensitive to enemies. If the mountain rock python noticed Long Chen, then as long as it released the slightest bit of its power, it would destroy the entire mountain behind it. Then that fragile tree would be blown to bits. Little Snow, you go back. At the edge of its territory, release your aura to draw it away. If it comes after you, don't attack, focus completely on running. Once I obtain the 7-stamen sea heart fruit, I will immediately come to help you, said Long Chen. Little Snow gently rubbed his head against the ground, indicating that he understood. He stealthily retreated. Not long after, his roar came from the distance. Little Snow had already begun provoking the mountain rock python. Little Snow's roar rang out from the distance. The mountain rock python twitched, but then it didn't move again. It seemed that it didn't want to deal with Little Snow. Little Snow once more roared, this time much closer. He had clearly already entered its territory. Now the mountain rock python became a bit irritated. Its mountain-like body finally uncoiled. Only once it uncoiled did Long Chen notice that it had two bumps on its head. They were extremely large, looking similar to two horns. The mountain rock python doesn't have any horns. Maybe this thing isn't a hidden rock python at all. Long Chen was startled. It raised its head high into the air, looking at the distant little snow. It actually let out a roar. That roar was extremely strange. It sounded almost like a bull's cry and was very low-pitched, but its voice contained its might. It clearly disdained to kill Little Snow and wanted him to scram on his own. Suddenly, Little Snow shot a wind blade at the python. The python had never imagined that Little Snow, a 6th-rank magical beast, would dare to attack it. It was actually struck in the head. But this powerful wind blade didn't cause the python's head to even tremble. The wind blade was instantly shattered. It was finally infuriated. His body shot forward and its scales lit up. His huge body moved like the wind. However, now that it moved, the mountain beside it was also damaged. A large part of it crumbled to the ground. Not good. Wings suddenly appeared on Long Chen's back, and he shot over at the 7-pith sea heart fruit. A huge boulder was currently falling toward it. The 7-pith sea heart fruit was extremely special. If it was shaken by the slightest outer force, it would immediately pop like a balloon. That was what made it extremely rare. Bang! The boulder shattered onto the ground. But the 7-pith sea heart fruit was safely within Long Chen's primal chaos space. As soon as he put it away, Long Chen's wings flapped. He soared into the air and saw that Little Snow was leading the python on a wild chase. The python was clearly infuriated. As it rapidly chased, its huge body blasted all the huge surrounding trees to smithereens. Little Snow had pushed his speed to its peak, but in front of a 7th-rank magical beast, his speed superiority was lessened a great deal. After just a few thousand miles, the python behind him had gotten much closer. It opened its mouth and suddenly shot out a rain of green liquid at Little Snow. Little Snow immediately dodged, avoiding it by just a hair's breadth. Any place touched by the green rain was corroded, whether it was a tree or a rock. It appeared as if Little Snow was releasing an angry oil as everything behind him was corroded and released a disgusting stench. Little Snow, get back! Split the heavens! Long Chen finally arrived just in time to see Little Snow narrowly avoid getting struck by the green rain. He immediately slashed down Flying Rainbow. Boom! Swordlight crashed onto the python's head. The ground crumbled as a few of its scales broke and its blood splashed. But surprisingly, his attack only caused a foot-deep injury. A foot-deep injury was basically nothing to this huge python. Suddenly, the python's tail whipped through the air. A fierce gale erupted as if space was being blown apart. Long Chen hastily summoned the 4-star battle armor. His divine ring appeared and he once more slashed out with Split the Heavens. With the support of the divine ring and 4-star battle armor, this attack managed to sever the python's huge tail. Blood splashed through the air. Long Chen had only just slashed out to defend against its tail when the python's mouth shot over to devour him. Long Chen was startled. He hadn't expected it to be so agile. The injury to its tail didn't affect its speed at all, and by the time he reacted, he was already caught within its mouth. Not good. A fishy liquid filled its mouth. It was obviously a terrifying poison. Long Chen's flame energy suddenly circulated around him in defense, and then a huge flame sphere exploded in his hand. Boom! The mountain rock python had just captured Long Chen in its mouth before its head exploded. Long Chen reappeared, surrounded by flames. The air was filled with a nauseating stench. He had just landed on the ground and put away the python's corpse when he saw a group of people in the distance. When he saw them clearly, his gaze immediately turned icy. Release Little Snow! There were a total of 9 people, and each of them had half of their faces covered in black scales. Their eyes looked like the eyes of a poisonous viper, cold and without the slightest emotion. 8 of them were rank 2 celestials while 1 was a rank 3 celestial. His aura was almost on the same level as Shui Yu and the others. One of them was holding a strange metal net that had captured Little Snow. The net had sharp barbs on it that were stabbing into Little Snow's skin. He was quivering. That net seemed to be a specially made enchanted item used to capture house pets. Seeing Little Snow captured, the killing intent in Long Chen's eyes continued to surge. This is your house pet? TCH, you really are an idiot. You actually dared to bring such a weak house pet into the immemorial path. The man holding the net snorted and dragged Little Snow back. He clearly had no intention of releasing him. The others also didn't place Long Chen in their eyes. Their eyes were cold and disdainful, as if they were emperors looking down on an ant. That was especially true of the rank 3 celestial leading them. His gaze was like a blade, making it so others didn't dare to look at him directly. With half of his face covered in black scales, he appeared even more sinister. What sect are you from? Did you kill this mountain rock python? He asked, his tone like he was interrogating a criminal. Either release Little Snow or die. Choose quickly, said Long Chen icily. He had already lost patience. Furthermore, his killing intent was growing more and more powerful. He felt like he was about to lose his calm. Brat, you really are courting death. You want us to release your house pet? Keep dreaming. The man holding the net smiled sinisterly. He was just about to kill Little Snow. Soul impact. He had only just formed such a thought when a vast spiritual strength stabbed into all their souls like needles. A spiritual attack. The rank 3 celestial was actually extremely startled, and he hastily shouted a warning. At this moment, the bead on his neck let out a powerful fluctuation. It was a defensive soul item to block spiritual attacks. He might have a defensive soul item, but the others didn't. They were immediately affected and lost their consciousness for a moment. Long Chen's spiritual attack wasn't powerful, and it was also scattered amongst them, causing it to be weakened further. If Meng Qi had been attacking, these people would have instantly died. But Long Chen didn't have the time or energy to train in soul arts. The majority of his soul arts were only defensive. His offensive soul arts were very crude, and against experts on this level, such a spiritual attack was only able to cause them to lose consciousness for the blink of an eye. However, the blink of an eye was enough. Long Chen shot out like a ghost, instantly reaching the one holding the net. The rank 3 celestial moved to stop him, but he was one step too late. Flying rainbow flashed. That person's hand was severed and Long Chen placed Little Snow into his spiritual space. At the same time, he grabbed that person's neck, and the next instant he had already fallen back. From the moment he had unleashed his soul art, dodged the rank 3 celestial, cut off that person's hand, saved Little Snow, and escaped, the amount of time that had passed would be less than enough for an ordinary person to blink. When the other blood python experts recovered, they realized that one of them had already fallen into Long Chen's hands. Bastard, you dare to attack our grand blood python race? Are you asking us to exterminate your entire sect and family? Roared one of them. Hurry up and release him. Then claw out your own organs, or you'll die without a grave and every single member of your family will die, said another guy. It seemed they were worried Long Chen wasn't angry enough, and so they were adding oil to the fire. They surrounded Long Chen, but Long Chen was still tightly holding that person's neck. If Long Chen clenched his hand, he wouldn't just shatter that person's neck, but he would also shatter his head, so they didn't dare to attack yet. Brat, I don't believe that you dare to kill me, said the blood python expert caught in Long Chen's hand. He was confident in using his race to intimidate him. Ha 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 ha. Long Chen laughed. His laughter grew louder and louder until it was as loud as thunder. That laughter was full of disdain. Don't dare? In this world, is there anything that I, Long Chen, don't dare to do? Long Chen suddenly increased his strength. In front of the blood python experts' disbelieving gazes, that person was crushed into a bloody mist. The bloody mist floated through the air, its scent wafting into their noses. The blood python experts looked as though flames were about to explode out of their eyes. They hadn't expected Long Chen to really dare to ignore their warnings and kill one of their members right in front of them. That was a provocation to all the ancient races. Their bloodlines were different, which was why they didn't view humans as the same race. In fact, they even viewed them as an inferior race due to their arrogance. But Long Chen never liked to indulge people for being stupid. He had already warned them, and they had actually wanted to kill Little Snow in front of him. Since they wanted to die so urgently, Long Chen could only help them out. Die! The rank 3 Celestial roared and smashed his fist at Long Chen. Countless scales appeared over his fist, giving it immense power. Long Chen also let out a punch, and both of them were forced back by the other. Long Chen was startled. As expected, this person really wasn't an ordinary rank 3 Celestial. He was also an innate rank 3 Celestial, someone on the level of Shui Yu and the others. The immense collision directly blew back the other blood python experts surrounding Long Chen. "You mongrel!" Before one of them could finish speaking, Flying Rainbow struck like a bolt of lightning, piercing his head. Long Chen activated Flying Rainbow's runes, and its sharp aura completely erupted. Those blood python experts might have immediately raised their weapons to block, but they were still cut into mincemeat in front of Flying Rainbow's swordlight. Their weapons were all enchanted items, while Flying Rainbow was a treasure item. Furthermore, it specialized in sharpness. As a result, countless bits of flesh flew through the air. This was a treasure item's power. All enchanted items were garbage in front of it. Previously, when he had fought Shui Yu and Lang Yuyan, he hadn't been able to see this superiority. But now that he was fighting enemies that used enchanted items, Long Chen was delighted to see his advantage. Bastard! The rank 3 Celestial was completely infuriated upon seeing his comrades being slain. He suddenly took out a whip. The barbed whip sparkled with a golden light. If someone were struck by it, then even if their body could handle it, a large strip of their skin would be torn off. It didn't seem like a weapon. Instead, it seemed more like a tool for torture. Looking at it would give a person chills. Long Chen swung his sword, slashing it onto the whip. The whip was knocked back, but it wasn't damaged. It was obvious that this was also a treasure item. That gave Long Chen a surprise. For a treasure item to have been forged into this form, perhaps it had many unknown abilities. If he was struck, then even if he didn't die, he would probably lose half of his life. The rank 3 Celestial attacked 3 times in a row before Long Chen used his immense power to knock him back a step. Divine Ring. 4-star battle armor. Split the heavens. An immense sword image soared through the clouds and slashed down on the rank 3 Celestial. The rank 3 Celestial was horrified. In the blink of an eye, Long Chen had suddenly pushed his power to its peak. It had to be known that a battle was a gradual process. Increasing your power too violently would damage your own meridians. But against Long Chen, he had no time to consider that right now. A sensation of death washed over him. Clenching his teeth, his runes suddenly transformed. He seemed like a magical beast now, and his aura was pushed to the peak. His whip smashed down. Boom! He vomited a mouthful of blood and shot back like a shooting star. He directly tore through a large mountain. He had only just come out of the mountain when Long Chen's second attack arrived. The immense mountain was cleanly cut in two by Long Chen's sword. His terrifying sword chi continued far into the distance. At this moment, a figure appeared from the destroyed ground. The rank 3 Celestial was covered in blood, and his lower body had been destroyed. He appeared incredibly wretched. As expected, even amongst innate Celestials, there is an immense difference. This blood python expert's aura was on the same level as Lang Yuyan and the others, but his actual battle power was a far cry from them. He was injured on just the second attack. Bastard! Do you know the price of your provocation today? He roared. Long Chen ignored him. He didn't even know how many of these arrogant idiots he had killed. There was no need to reason with these people. That was just a waste of saliva. It was better to just directly hack them to death. His sword once more released a ray of sword chi. Long Chen wanted to kill him today. Little Snow was safe within his spiritual space, but his body was now riddled with injuries. That net had been too immoral. Those countless barbs were impossible to remove without sacrificing a great deal of flesh. At the same time as he was distressed, he was also furious. No matter what, this person had to be killed. Ancestral spirit, materialize. The blood python expert roared, and his runes formed a large illusory image. It seemed to be a serpent. It was huge but very indistinct. Compared to the image Lang Yuan had summoned, it was much more indistinct, and its aura was also much weaker. However, his own aura also rose a level. His whip once more whistled toward Long Chen. "I'll make you pay a price for your arrogance," he roared. His whip suddenly grew explosively, going from 3 meters to 300 meters long. It was like a ribbon, attempting to wrap around Long Chen. As expected, there's something fishy. All these kinds of strange weapons had secret methods to use them. Although he had been suspicious, in a true battle, a sudden special technique could result in unexpected results. This golden whip had some kind of mechanism that allowed it to retract and extend. It had thousands of variations, and it had special runes on its barbs. Once those barbs struck flesh, the flesh would harden, almost like fossilization. Then when the barbs were slightly pulled, they would immediately pull out a large chunk of flesh. Although Long Chen didn't know that, he could sense an immense threat from it. He didn't want to test how it would feel to be struck by its barbs. The rank 3 Celestial's techniques were extremely swift. By the time Long Chen reacted, he was already surrounded by the whip. It was too late to escape. This was one of his trump cards, and it was extremely powerful. Until now, it had proved to have a wondrous impact against countless experts. He had trained this move to the pinnacle and couldn't be any better at using it. Whether it was his speed, timing, or angle, everything was controlled perfectly. Suddenly, Long Chen was surrounded by countless golden scales. They formed an armor around his body. The whip rapidly struck over and over. Sparks flew, but it was unable to damage these scales. These scales came from the hidden ground gold spider king, a king amongst 7th-rank magical beasts. They were natural soul items and incomparably sharp. Although their power was only comparable to enchanted items, up until now, the only thing capable of destroying them was Lang Yuan's sword. This whip clearly hadn't reached that level yet. With the golden scales blocking for him, Long Chen escaped the whip's entanglement. At the next moment, Long Chen's sword came slashing toward the rank 3 Celestial. The Celestial was startled. Now he was stuck in an awkward position. His whip was too long, so he needed to block with something else. He took out a huge shield. It was extremely thick and covered in runes. Its aura made it seem like a high-grade enchanted item. With a light sound, Long Chen's sword cut the shield in two. Blood erupted from the rank 3 Celestial as he was also almost cut in two. If it hadn't been for the shield, he would have died. He turned pale. Flying Rainbow was just too sharp. Having just taken a stroll past the gates of hell, he was finally afraid. He put away his whip, and runic wings appeared on his back. He fled. "You want to leave? Leave your life behind first. Today I want to see if your luck really can stop me from killing you." Long Chen put away the scales. Lightning wings appeared on his back, and he shot after him.